Hello, I'm Dynast Amir.
So I reached out to another friend of mine. I said, look, I need to go on vacation somewhere. Where should I go? He said, go to Africa. And not only am I going to go, I'm going to explore a new country. So I went to Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Mali, Senegal, Morocco, Liberia, Namibia, Kenya, the Voodoo Festival in Ouida, Gambia, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire. Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. It's been a beautiful experience, just learning more about our culture, our indigenous culture. So Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. I'm in search of my roots. In finding that, I would experience my Uhuru, which is freedom.
Till next time, Dynast Amir, I'm out.
Peace. I hope all is well. I hope your Tuesday's going well. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Again, please hit the like button. Also, make sure you share and make sure you subscribe. Couple of announcements, guys. If you have not bought the documentary In Search of Uhuru, please go to searchforuhuru.com. Again, please go to searchforuhuru.com and cop the documentary. That was a trailer. This is the best Africa-related documentary in the May that has came out in the last, we're going to say 10 years. In the last 10 years. This is by far the best documentary that has came out in the last 10 years. So please go and support and buy the documentary. Also, tours. We are rolling. So I have 3 spots left for the tour to Senegal in May for the Jazz Festival. I have 3 spots left for the tour to Senegal in May for the Jazz Festival. So listen, if you would like to come roll with us to the Jazz Festival in May 21st to the 30th, one of the largest jazz festivals in the world in St. Louis, Senegal. Go to Danfo. That's DANFO. Danfo. That's DANFO. Africa. Again, go to Danfo. That's DANFO. Africa. Again, we got 3 spots left for Senegal in May for the Jazz Festival. So come and roll with us. We will love to have you join us. Also, Sierra Leone, April, citizenship ceremony, swearing in. They have not officially announced it, but per my sources, it's going to happen. So to learn more, go to donfo.africa. Again, please go to donfo.africa. What else? Nigeria, August, Oshun Festival. Nigeria in August for the Oshun Festival. Come and roll with us to Nigeria in August for the Oshun Festival. Go to donfo.africa to learn more. Without further ado, we're going to jump right into today's topic. shout out to Philip Lindsay. Philip sent me this. Well, not this particular article that I'm gonna pull up, but he sent me an article in regards to Black people in capitalism. I'm gonna tell you where I stand in regards to capitalism. I support capitalism, but with socialist safety nets. Again, I support capitalism, but with socialist safety nets. All right. That's where I stand where it comes to capitalism. I agree with it, but with socialist safety nets. So, Brother Philip sent me this article this morning in regards to, Black people and how Richard Nixon opened the doors up for Black capitalism, which distracted us from, reparations and working together as a collective. But I mean, even before Nixon, Black people chose integration anyway. So that pretty much killed, in my honest opinion, are Black people owed reparations? Absolutely. But the opportunity that we had during the civil rights era, during the civil rights protests, when we really could have, when we had the leverage, again, when we had the leverage to demand reparations, we chose integration. Again, we chose integration. That's what we chose. Now, honestly, I just don't think Black people have anything to leverage in order to demand reparations right now, because the majority of us don't care. We got what we wanted. We wanted access to whiteness, and we have it now. So we good. We Gucci in the minds and eyes of a lot of Black people. I would say the majority of Black people. As long as the Republicans don't get into office and we could vote Democrat and we got access to jobs, we good. That's why you do not see a big push for reparations from the Black community. That's just the reality of it. I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that, but that's just the reality of it. Again, we chose integration over reparations, and this new era of civil, I don't know what to call it, civil rights or civil rights activists. Here we go. This new era of hold on, let me plug my laptop in before it go dead. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. This new era of civil rights, or this new era of activists, they're more concerned with social issues like LGBTQ. Yeah, that's what they're more concerned with. Case in point, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter wasn't out there talking about reparations. They was talking about gender neutral, gender affirming, 2 men, 2 women, non-nuclear family. That's what they were talking about. I mean, seriously, that's what they were talking about. So it's not in fact, here we go. It's not about what's the word I want to use? Tangibles. It's about symbolism. Black folks want symbolism. Joe Biden shows up. In fact, let me find this video. Let me see if I can pull this video up. Joe Biden at the Black church. Hold on. Joe Biden at the Black church. Joe Biden, Ebenezer Baptist Church. Let me pull that up. Guys, do me a favor. Hit the like button, please. Hit the like button. Here we go. Your boy Joe Biden at church. This is what black folks want. This is what black folks want right here. Here we go. Joe Biden at Ebenezer Baptist Church. Joe Biden just secured the black vote just by showing up to Ebenezer Baptist Church. Hold on one second. Let me pull this up real quick. Here we go. Skip that. There we go.
Now to today's other top story, the celebration of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., complete with a visit to Atlanta from President Joe Biden. The setting was Ebenezer Baptist Church, a congregation which once regularly heard the sermons of Dr. King before his assassination in 1968. On this Sunday, the historic sermon came from the nation's president, and he used it to say democracy was at a perilous moment. Biden arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson aboard Air Force One and was met on the tarmac by Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens and U.S. Senator John Ossoff. Then the motorcade wound its way down Sweet Auburn and to Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Georgia's other U.S. Senator, the Reverend Raphael Warnock, welcomed him. In his remarks, the president spoke of Dr. King's mission, which was, in his words, to redeem the soul of America.
What is the soul of America? It's easy to say, but what is the soul of America? Well, the soul is the breath, the life, the essence of who we are. The soul makes us us. The soul of America is embodied in the sacred proposition that we're all created equal in the image of God.
Biden's words were meant to invoke the memory of Dr. King, but also inspire a push to the future.
Joe Biden just secured the black vote right there. Joe Biden got the black vote right there. Joe Biden runs again into next year, 2024. There you go. He got the vote right there. There you go. There you go. But anyways, let me get into this article. But all my black folks who are anti-capitalist, all right. Marcus Garvey was a capitalist. And what's the lady's name that did that had the hair care back in the 1920s? Guys, help me out. She was the richest woman in the world back in the 20s. Guys, help me out. Somebody throw me a bone. The sister who came up with the hair products back in the 20s. Somebody help me out. Oh, man. So, yeah, Marcus Garvey. Madam C.J. Walker. Thank you so much, Madam C.J. Walker. But the great thing about it, they created opportunities for other black people, and they hired other black people. That's why when capitalism is done right, I don't see a problem with it. If you are a capitalist and if you are hiring and employing black people, why should I shout you down? Why? Again, if you are hiring and employing and empowering people who look like me and you, what's with the hate? Again, what's with the hate? That's my point. So I believe in capitalism with socialism, safety nets. Let's jump into this article. Nixon and black capitalism. So basically, what the argument was when the article that Philip sent me was when Nixon opened the door for like SBA loans for black businesses. That kind of put the fire out, or any thought of reparations and income equality and shortening the racial wealth gap for us as a collective. When President Nixon gave black people, black business owners access to SBA loans, and we became more capitalistic, even though, like I said, we were always capitalists. i.e. Marcus Garvey and Madam C.J. Walker. Black folks were no longer motivated to attain reparations. So let's read this article. And then we'll take a commercial break and open up the lines. You guys are more than welcome to call in. Nixon and Black Capitalism. The disgraced president made Small Business Administration loans available to Black entrepreneurs for the first time. Oh, we go listen to the article.
Membership fees apply after free trial. Cancel anytime.
Can I be real for a second? That goal you have to exercise and eat.
Richard Nixon made SBA loans available to Black entrepreneurs. Crane Chicago Business. Supplier diversity needs to focus on industries of today and tomorrow. B2B diversity can help us achieve racial equity and economic justice. Developers have a unique opportunity to contribute to equity. Inside one company's supplier diversity initiative. Richard Nixon is best remembered for sanctioning hush payments to the Watergate burglars and miring himself deeply in a cover-up despite his famous protestation, "I am not a crook." But his domestic policy accomplishments include opening the possibility of Black capitalism. Veterans of that era can recite by memory the number of Nixon's 1969 executive order. 11458, the document prescribed arrangements for developing and coordinating a national program for minority business enterprise. For the first time, Small Business Administration loans would be available for Black entrepreneurs. The move was a shrewd political, some would say cynical, calculation. By the late 1960s, the civil rights movement had taken a violent turn, with protests and riots breaking out in large cities, including Chicago. Nixon needed to quell unrest with a solution that would be palatable to his white Republican base. Instead of government jobs and government housing and government welfare, Nixon said in accepting the Republican nomination in 1968, "Let government use its tax and credit policies to enlist in this battle the greatest engine of progress ever developed in the history of man, American private enterprise." Says Ralph Moore, a veteran Chicago consultant in supplier diversity and minority business development, "I don't care if you do the right thing for the wrong reason, we'll take it." I give credit to Nixon. Nixon's program paved the way for a generation of Black entrepreneurs and supplier diversity programs that funneled work to minority businesses. But these initiatives haven't stemmed the widening wealth gap, critics say. These programs fail because the benefits of capitalism always accrue to the owners of the capital, law professor Mircea Baradaran wrote in the New York Times last year. Using capitalism to fix the racial wealth gap will work only if there is a means to transfer capital, assets, wealth or housing. Activists say the alternative that will create jobs and middle-class prosperity lies in public sector jobs programs akin to the New Deal. Nevertheless, presidents since Nixon have promoted variations on the theme, including enterprise zones, new market tax credits and promise zones. President-elect Joe Biden has proposed building on initiatives of the Obama administration, expanding small business lending and tax credits and increasing opportunities for African American-owned businesses to obtain or participate in federal contracts. The Biden plan for Black America will advance the economic mobility of African Americans and close the racial wealth and income gaps, his campaign pledged.
All right, guys. So I'm going to put the link in the chat room. If you guys want to call in and add to the conversation, you're more than welcome to call in and add to the conversation, and we could build on this combo. Again, link is in the chat room, and we are going to take a commercial break. We have a word from our sponsors. Again, we got a word from our sponsors.
Alexis here, coming to you with an awesome sale of 25% off when you use promo code UHURU25 at alexisfowler.com. I provide services like digital art, logo designs, packaging designs, web designs, social media flyers, and much more. If you're an entrepreneur with a business or a startup company, make sure you take advantage of this opportunity, getting 25% off when you use promo code UHURU25 at alexisfowler.com.
Learn the ins and outs of IT and launch your IT career in just a matter of weeks with the help of Lifting the Veil IT Academy.
I took Lifting the Veil Academy with subs. Took a while, but I'm here. I made it. I'm now an SSRS developer. I started on the 13th, making a rate of $48 an hour.
Sign up for a free consultation and see where this industry could take you.
To learn more, go to www.ltvacademy.com. That's www.ltvacademy.com.
At the Okoli Law Group, we specialize in producing justice. If you or a loved one in the Atlanta metro area is facing serious criminal charges, then you need serious legal representation.
The Okoli Law Group is here for you. The Okoli Law Group is here for us.
The Okoli Law Group, serious legal representation.
All right, guys, link is in the chat room. If you want to call in at the conversation, click on the link. Link is in the chat room. If you want to call in and add to the conversation, link is in the chat room. I don't know if that's really Morgan Freeman on the narration, but hey, you never know. Again, guys, click on the link if you want to call in. Also, hit the like button. Again, please click on that like button. If you did not hear the directions earlier to click on the like button, please click on that like button. Well, what are your thoughts on Black America and capitalism in this idea called capitalism? Mr. Ife Olua, shout out to you too. Shout out to you too. Hey, that might call in. Call in. Brother Fajimoni, call in. And guys, don't be calling on your Obama phones either, okay? We got to hear you clearly. Do not call in on your Obama phones. We need to hear you clearly, okay? If I lived in Africa, I would be fighting for equality there. I'll be fighting for injustice there. But I live in America. My Black family here have the right to be what? The right to be what? All right, so Fajimoni, we're going to wait for you to call in. Collective bargaining is done best from corporations. We mainly do sole proprietorship. So you got a point there. Every time I decide to leave this place, there is a Black person telling me we need you here in North America, Black man. Okay. Okay. All right, I hear you. I hear you. Give us some context. Dude, call in. I broke it down. What do you need to? I mean, what more do you need to know, or what don't you understand? I guess that's my question. Okay, we got Al. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah. Good evening, Dennis.
Good evening. Well, good afternoon. Well, good evening.
Yeah, in the UK it's good evening. It's just gone past 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, basically it's Nixon. It's funny, isn't it? When you look at the some of the right wing, the right lean government or the right lean parties, they tend to, have some policies that's quite really bad when it comes to racial cohesion, but their financial policies tend to be good for ethnic minority for some reason.
Right. But they don't. We don't focus on that here in America. Even if the policies benefit ethnic minorities, they still focus on Trump's a white supremacist.
Yeah, and stuff like that. It's funny because in the UK we had a left wing party which was Labour government when I was young. basically you struggle to get employment, and it was a left lane. A lot of the institution was run by the lefties. They wouldn't give you a job. They would be nice to you, but they wouldn't give you a job. But
Right.
then all of a sudden you had obviously the current conservative government, which is more right wing leaning. They basically, when they came to power, there's jobs everywhere for everybody. So it's give and take, And basically, what I reckon with the left, they tend to go for the gesture politics. They just go on and talk about identity politics and that symbolism to make it look like they're on your side, but really, truly, what they're doing is totally different. So
Yeah, and the example I always give, if you just look in liberal ran cities, and black people, when I say we're at the bottom, we're at the bottom.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask, in regards to the article you showed, Nixon was giving out loans to businesses in that article. I think that's, unless I didn't hear it properly.
Right. But we've always been kept out of. We've always been locked out when it comes to having access to capital. So,
yes.
So
no, because I was just looking at it from a capitalist purist perspective. I think it's supposed to be like a over reliance on the free market. So as corporations or businesses, they don't really promote government intervention. I mean, we live in a mixed economy, so I don't know. Because when you look at the richest corporations or companies in your country, I don't think they got like any form of help. Like, did Apple get like government loan?
I want to say Amazon got help, but they get help through I guess the tax code is for everybody to exploit. So you can't really say that. But I want to say Amazon got a lot of subsidies, and Apple probably gets subsidies as well.
Okay.
Larry, I don't think in the UK government was allowed to give subsidy to businesses over here, unless if they have to go through the bank. I think that's one of the reasons why they wanted to come out of the EU, so they'll be able to have that freedom to do so. And basically, it's subsidy. I think America tend to do that more than Europe, because they don't want government interference in business, and I think that's a wrong move.
Sorry, you think what's wrong? Government interfering in business?
No, basically government giving grant or subsidy to businesses over here. I don't think for example, like the green thingy that they wanted to set up in the UK, they couldn't have done it if there was part of the EU. So like a lot of the corporations out there, for example, like Amazon, the UK government will not be able to give them money or subsidy under the EU law. But
does black capitalism, that Dynast is talking about, black capitalism, that involves supporting governments, helping businesses?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's more like it's more like a liberal right wing liberal kind of policy.
Do you support that? Because I'm guessing Dynast supports that.
Well, of course I do. I think giving businesses to the to lift people out of poverty is one way to give them freedom, right? No matter how much freedom you give them, like what the left-wing government tend to do, even over here, they give you enough and they put you on benefit, and they let you go around the street and have a freedom to do whatever you want to do, or you have a system where you can actually go, and actually achieve your potential, and you have limited freedom. This is the situation here for black people. I mean.
Well, my thing is, Larry, if you're creating opportunities, then why not?
Okay, I see what you mean.
You know what I mean? If you're creating opportunities for other people, I mean, I don't see a problem with getting some type of assistance.
That's what they're trying to do here, Larry. Like, I don't know if you heard about the like up north when they started voting the Tories, the northern powerhouse that they talk about, like under the EU, they could not take money and give to these towns, like this deprived town, to rebuild themselves. So when they come out of the EU, they're able to do that. So,
Wouldn't you say then, Black Americans, your people, did
pardon?
practice Black capitalism in the 1900s or even before that?
I think black
But
people.
no, I'm talking about Black Americans. I believe, and
No,
I'm
we
trying to
did.
see.
Okay, we did,
Yeah.
and then we kind of ended that with integration.
Okay, but didn't MLK also spoke about reparations? He didn't speak about it too much, but there is a speech where he does talk about reparations.
Right. And then he was taken out.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah, he was part of his rhetoric. I even think it's part of BLM's rhetoric because BLM, they're against police brutality. They speak about reparations.
Reparation. That is a pro LGBTQ RIA. I don't know the other.
Yeah, they are. They're definitely there. But
That's what they are. They're that number one.
I've seen them. So what you think they're lying, even though they've mentioned it? You think that they're more about gay and trans rights, even though they've mentioned.
Absolutely.
Okay, I see. All right, fair enough. So in your opinion, because as we both agree, your ancestors, they practiced it and they were quite good at it because people can mention various communities. What happened apart from the massacres? Was that the main thing that?
Well, it was integration. I mean, I would say Black Wall Street was a form of Black capitalism. You know, Marcus Garvey. I forgot her name already. With the rich
Madam C.J. Walker.
Madam C.J. Walker. Those are all examples of Black capitalism, but we chose integration.
Integration is the enemy.
bring back segregation every day. Any day I'll take it.
Yeah. I actually used to I supported segregation, except for one thing. In the Jim Crow South, it said separate but equal. Things were separate, but there was no equality. So it didn't work. So you say people are separate and you force Black Americans to be separate, but there was no equality.
Right.
So the question is, because Black capitalism, I think, it's interesting. It would help empower Black communities, but it would force Black people to behave in a way which is anti-capitalist because they'd have to be communal with each other. So if you had Black farmers, those Black farmers would have to provide for the Black community because that would be their market.
Right, but it'll still be a form of capitalism. My definition of capitalism is if you have a product or service that I see value in, I'm gonna buy it from you. And I think you should be able to do as you feel with those profits.
But would the people be holding on to you? Would they have to buy from the Black businesses? Because in a free market, they could go elsewhere.
Well, during segregation, you know, the Black dollar circulated more in the Black community than it does now.
Yeah, but that system was different because it wasn't actually a fair free market system, was it? It was a system where the Black Americans were told, you come into this neighborhood to buy this and that, you're going to get treated badly. So because of that racism, it forced them to stick within their own, which turned out okay to such an extent that you had some Black Americans who were so successful that the businessmen would end up disappearing, and then you'd find out they were hanging from a tree days later because the whites would get jealous of the success of those Black Americans who were successful, I don't know, saloon owners, diner owners, or shopping.
Yeah, but Larry, that wasn't the majority of, that wasn't happening to like the majority. Yeah, you had that happen, but that wasn't the norm. You know what I mean? Okay, you have a successful Black business. Here comes the white folks to burn it down. I mean, it happened, but it wasn't the norm.
Okay. Because I guess the thing that destroyed it was the emigration, the mass migration of Black Americans out of the South to
No. What destroyed it was integration.
Really? I want to hear more about that. How did integration
like Black Wall Street? Black Wall Street, they rebuilt Black Wall Street.
They rebuilt it?
Yeah, the civil rights happened and they abandoned it.
Wait. Like the territory.
They rebuilt, but Black Wall Street was damn near finished, completed. It was back active, and then civil rights happened, integration.
And then what happened to all that land?
I mean, it's still there, but we stopped supporting each other.
Okay. So what you see now, so that's the interesting thing. The capitalism is there, but the socialism, the communal way of thinking, we have to then support black
or
businesses.
the system in place wasn't robust enough.
No, it was robust.
Okay.
It's robust. It was more robust back then than it is now.
Right, that's true.
I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will agree with you there. I'll agree. I mean, they had banks, they had businesses, they were lending out money.
We had grocery stores, we had everything.
Yeah. I think they were getting their money from some of the white businesses to be able to lend out. And I think even
not necessarily. It's just there was a lust, and we just bought. We were forced to buy from within because white folks didn't want our money.
So, do you think forcing in the 21st century could that be done? Force where Black Americans would have to buy only from Black American businesses?
Well, no, because I mean, I think the power structure, they realize how valuable our dollar is, and so they wouldn't let that happen.
So how could they achieve it in the 21st century?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not going to happen.
Okay, I see. You don't.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why you probably will find it difficult to import food from Africa to the US. Like
come on, guys.
No, they're already doing it. I mean, food is already imported here, but it's just to convince Black Americans, hey, get this, Nigerian yam and this other food from Africa versus Kroger. They're not going to do it.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah, I was looking forward to it, man. You pulled me in, you reeled me in.
If put like this, Larry, if Whole Foods, or I don't know if you guys have Whole Foods in the UK, but if Whole Foods or Kroger, I don't know who your guys' major grocery chain is in the UK. If they don't put the stamp of approval on, Africa food being a major import, Black people aren't going to buy it.
That's true, though. But even over here, like Asda, they sell the African food nowadays, and to be honest, most of the African food is sold by the Turkish or the Pakistani or the Indians. They're the one that's selling African food.
That's
if you want to buy African food, that's where you go. That's why a lot of Black people go for their shopping.
But
Indian.
Even here in Atlanta, I mean, you have like Nigeria. You have like a couple of Nigerian supermarkets, African supermarkets. But when you go in there, it's nothing but Africans or Nigerians. Like Black Americans aren't going in there.
No.
So basically, so there is no conclusion on how Black capitalism can be successful in America. It's a no-go. It's not going to happen. Is that
because the mindset itself is
what? Is it really? Come on, man. There has to be more. There's got to be some optimism here.
There's that communal kind of thing that's missing, isn't it? You know what I mean? To say, you know what, I'd rather support, my community instead of having to buy from, the other people, even though I'm probably going to pay extra bit of money, but at least I'm going to make the profit and that money is going to stay within. It's short-sightedness, isn't it?
Oh, guys, there's got to be something.
This is what affects us all the time.
Sorry. So what you're saying, is it self-hate that Black Americans won't like?
It's not about Black Americans.
It's integration. Integration killed it.
Integration.
Okay. I mean, like I know Gas 'Em Up was on yesterday saying, how Nigerians and he'll stop at import on Ferraris and all these luxury goods. Like, I don't mind it, but I would just like for us to be the ones selling it. I mean, there's certain things that Black people, I mean, I can't stop Black women for wearing, fake hair or the weaves, I mean, you're not going to stop that, but hey, how about buy the fake hair from somebody that looks like you?
Yeah.
Hey, you want to buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a luxury car? Try, if you can, try to find someone that looks like you and buy from them.
Yeah.
Is there a framework in your country where you can point at a community that's doing it? Like, could you say like the Koreans, they practice Korean capitalism or
man, have you been to, well, I don't know if you've been to America before, to LA. Have you been to Koreatown in LA or Little Tokyo?
No.
Like, it was a freaking metropolis. In fact, I want to say the tallest building on the West Coast is in Koreatown. I hope Philip comes back on. I think the tallest building on the West Coast is in Koreatown in LA, and it's built by Koreans. You know, it's just the only thing that's kind of disappointing is when you look at Koreatown, you look at Little Tokyo, you know, you look at all these like little Mexico or little Havana, like there's no African version here in America. I mean, you have like little Senegal in Harlem, but I mean, it's like one small street off of 125th, and they got a couple restaurants and shops, and that's about it. Like, there's no equivalent as far as Black people that rivals like Chinatown or Little Tokyo or Koreatown or even the Hispanic communities. There's no Black equivalent at all.
This is where the African government are lacking of vision. Like if you look at, you know, like Indian or some Asian countries, like for example, you know, the Middle East and that, all these countries in the world, they actually give money to companies to actually start setting up, you know, abroad, you know, like supermarket, you know, their own chains, you know what I mean? And that's how you actually, you know, you start to gain ground. You know, you got the logistic there, you got the stuff coming out from the port, you know, to this destination. And then when you get there, you know, you got the business you're going to supply it to. You don't have that. We don't have that as people, you know. So in America, you can do that. You know, I can see that's happening easily by setting up supermarkets.
Wait, hold on a minute. But Dynast, you practice Black capitalism, though. Successful.
I try my hardest to spend my money in the Black community as much as possible.
Because you provide a business,
right,
and most of your customers are primarily Black Americans, right, and you work with Africans as well when you go abroad.
Right.
Because I think you employ. You said
all my employees are African.
Yeah. So okay. So there's a silver lining there.
But I'm practicing more on the continent. I mean, I'm practicing here. Like again, I as much as possible try to circulate my dollars in the Black community as much as possible.
To be honest with you, we actually our, you know, sort of people where we came from, you know, we always have practiced capitalism. And I mean, if you look at the, you know, when we left the Mali Empire and come, you know, to the coastal side, the reason why we always fell out with this other tribe, because they wanted to have, you know, like where there's no hierarchy, you know, everyone can do their thing, they live within the community, they can exchange food and stuff like that. But our people were like, no, obviously we have to make this thing like centralize it. You know, we have one person and basically there's system in place. Anyone can, you know, buy and sell and trade as they like. So I think we've always been capitalists anyway.
I mean, the closest I practice to that is, I guess, I practice it as a customer. Where I live, there's a place that supplies Nigerian food. So I go there and I spend my money, and it's Nigerians there. But I don't go there all the time because I don't want to put on weight and become fat.
Well, like I said, the only places where it's hard for me, like as far as goods and services that I buy, where it's hard for me to spend within my community, is when I go grocery store shopping and like gas station.
Yes.
So like, prime example, I have to go get some work done on my car this week. Black owned guy, that's what I'm gonna take it to. Restaurants as much as possible.
Yeah.
You know, I do what I can here in the community, but it's easier to do it in Africa because everything, especially like Nigeria, I want to get my food. Hell, the ladies in the market, there you go. You know, gas stations, we own that. Snacks. The lady, when I'm in Oshogbo, you know, the lady has a damn store connected to her house. You know, I just walk up, you know, get snacks.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier to do in Africa, but can't necessarily do it here in America on that level.
You just have to see the way the Koreans or the Indians do it, because a lot of Indians have emigrated to New Jersey, and they're running things in a particular part of New Jersey. I can't remember the area. So they've got it on lockdown. They're doing their thing.
You know what they do? They always have like 10, 20 people that will just chip in, and they'll set up something, innit? And when they set that up,
a susu.
Yeah, something like that. That's how they do it. Dynasty, I think Philip want to come back on.
Yeah. Let me pass it to Mikiel, Complex, and Carrie. They'll pass it to Philip. Go ahead, Complex. Complex, you gotta mute yourself. Okay, remove. Carrie Fox, go ahead.
Peace, family. Yeah, so I think y'all hitting on a lot of the key points when it comes to capitalism, and especially Black capitalism, or what we want to call Black capitalism, because there are certain barriers you're bound to run into when it comes to capitalism. One of the key elements of capitalism that people don't really bring up is the age of economy. So you have let's say a economy that's like, I don't know, over 100 years old, 200 years old, and it'll compete with an economy that's, say, 50 years old or 40 years old or what have you. So what capitalism tell you to do is, if I'm working in a warehouse and I'm assembling parts for my business, I'll try to find the cheapest part possible. So I have the cheapest part possible at my, disposal to go grab, or I have a Black person who's selling the same part I need for a way higher price. Capitalism will always tell me to get the cheaper one so I can make a better one. So there's always going to be those lines blurred. Is it really capitalism if I'm really going out my way and making decisions that aren't in my favor economically? That doesn't really sound like capitalism, but at the end of the day, that's exactly what we need. There's like early in this country, America dealt with the same thing. I forget the boy name. He's the guy who they have a play for him on Broadway. What's that guy's name? I forget his name. He was one of the founders or whatever, but he was running the economics at the time, and he put in a lot of protectionist strategies. That's what they call it in the West. But if another country somewhere else did it, they'd call them socialists, where they just stopped imports of certain things and said, no, we're not going to let this come into our country because we're going to build up here. We're going to give our industry leaders here a chance to be competitive, because if we keep importing and, letting the free market reign, it will never establish certain industries. So it's the same thing with Black people. But the only thing is, how do you enforce any type of policy or strategy without government? Like, is it really even plausible for us to think like, all right, Black people in this country, we're going to get on the same page and we're not going to buy this from now, we're going to do this? Like, I'm not even sure that's plausible. But that's my take on it. I really wish I had a good solution to put forth. Well, hopefully I assess the situation good enough that somebody else can come after me and put forth how we get around those type of things, because we'll continue to blur the lines between, are we really practicing capitalism if we're really going to try to...
Yeah, we lost him. Go ahead, Complex.
Oh man, can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
All right, I was testing his new mic out. Man, he said a lot, and everybody said great things. Here's the thing: America was not built pretty much on capitalism through government. The government in the beginning didn't even want any central banks. It was built for, I don't really want to go to the free white man landowners argument, which is part of it, but there were free Blacks that were doing well as well back then in them days, actually. There's a lot of books on it. I can start mentioning some of them, but it wasn't built on that kind of capitalism. It was built for you to do things of your own. So the first thing I would say for the community is get a community trust, and do your own capitalism like a susu. You know what you remember? You know what a susu is, White Dynast?
Yes, of course.
And we also know susu is a tribe in Sierra Leone, amongst the Mende, Timne, and all that, right?
You said the fufu?
Susu.
No, Susu. Yeah, the Susu. They're from Guinea. They're not from Sierra Leone. But we do have Susu in Sierra Leone, but they're very minority. But Susu are the basically the one of the main descendants of Guinea. When you hear about Guinea Conakry, that's where they actually came from. Yes.
Yes, and that's what I was trying to lead to Susu and
listen,
you're right.
Yeah, I thought you said the fufu. I'm like the fufu.
I ate fufu last night, man. I ate fufu last night.
I can feel the energy, bro.
So the thing is, we're supposed to be landowners. With owning land, we should be able to get lines of credit based on that land, life insurance packages where you can borrow from, trusts that can trade things without taxation. These are things that were done in what was called Black Wall Street, which is also nicknamed Little Timbuktu, which people don't know about. I did a show about Black Wall Street versus Little Timbuktu. And it's some vehicles we can own. Trump owns these vehicles. These are the same vehicles they're trying to pierce when they're trying to investigate Donald Trump. Philip, I know you feel me, Philip. I know you feeling me. When they investigated Trump on his trust, his use of bonds and bonding, his use of land, his use of real estate, you don't need the government to do any real moves in what people would call black capitalism. If there is a such thing as black capitalism at its height, everybody knows they mentioned Black Wall Street, Little Timbuktu. And the way they operated was through those trusts, community trusts. These are private trusts. What the government does not create, the government I wouldn't say tries not to, but the government does not create. The government is supposed to uphold its rights as private. Like the 19th Amendment of the United States Constitution says, things not given to the state, the federal government, or the state belong to the people respectively. So we got to stop telling ourselves what we can't do without a government when these people did and do without a government. I mean, you think the richest men in the world are waiting on somebody's government? And the Carnegies, did they wait on government? No. JP Morgan bailed the United States government out twice. That's twice that we know about. And I just want to, so I'm going to see that, Diane, it's like we got to stop depending on the government to tell us that we can actually make some of ourselves and feed our children.
All right, go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry, go ahead, Philip. I called you Brandon. Go ahead, Philip.
That's funny. Thanks for having me on, Dynasty. And I'm like super busy today, but I wanted to give a little push here because, and let me give my respect to the panel. Illyria, always a pleasure. Al, always a pleasure. Complex, always a pleasure.
Always, boss.
It's just, Dynasty, I'm glad you did this. I sent you the article. Also, I sent you some data which would be helpful to be able to talk about with the panel to post some of that data. But here's the bottom line. What I was trying to get at was capitalism is basically the game of winners and losers. In order to have capitalism, you have to have winners and you have to have losers. The difference is that European capitalism, traditionally, if you go back through their history, always was built off of some form of feudalism. And what that meant was that they had a caste at the bottom of the society that was basically the surplus labor that created wealth. So their idea when they structured Western capitalism, when they moved to the Americas, was to make the native peoples and the African peoples the serfs. That's what they structured the society to do. And so when you're in that system, what you're saying is these groups of people, the native people and the African people, they will be the bottom, the losers of the capitalist winners and losers. Why? Because they are the engine by which the surplus capital will be generated. And that has not changed dramatically to this day. It is still more or less the Western model of capitalism. It's a form of a plantation, and they move that plantation all around the world. So back to Illyria and what he had said. And I just happen to have some information about it because my family actually went through this. And I don't share this often, but I'm going to share it here because it's relevant. Both of my great-grandparents were business people. Both of my great-grandparents were within a structure that was part of the capitalist system of the 19th century. In my one great-grandfather, and this is what triggered me to come in, it was exactly what O'Leary said. He had a general store in Mississippi, and that store, I am assuming, serviced primarily Black people. And at that time, they didn't have refrigeration. So in order for him to have fresh meat in the store, what they would have to do is get the meat from basically the butchers, and then it was placed in a thing called an ice box. And he would do this daily for his store. And what happened to him was one time he went to go get the meat and he never came back. He disappeared. That
Sorry to hear that.
No, it's a tragedy that our family lived with. Well, and like I said, I don't share it because it's not something that you and people that went through this share, but it's relevant to this conversation. So what happened? And this happened to lots of Black business people, lots of them, particularly in where he was, which was Mississippi, the disappeared of the Mississippi area. And many of them, you find when there were pictures, if there were some of them, they were in suits. And it was because those people were business people. They weren't laborers traditionally. Some were, but more times than not, they were part of this quote unquote capitalist class. But we need to demystify what this was. Most of those people, their work was in some way built into the larger American infrastructure, meaning that they were actually working for whites. They had their own business within the structure that bought or controlled their business, whether it was a farm or whether it was something else. And actually, Dr. Jared Ball has done some analysis of Black Wall Street. And in fact, most of the people on Black Wall Street were not working for Blacks. They were working for whites. And you know, it's just one of these things. We need to understand what actually went on.
Yes, exactly. Thanks. Because the banks, because I mentioned that earlier, the banks that existed there, where were they getting the money from? It was from, yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Okay. Now, okay. So Phil, are you saying the actual businesses or the people who supported Black Wall Street?
Both.
And patronized it?
Both. Some of them were self-capitalized, and I will explain what O'Leary just touched on it. To this day, some of my family that's in the South, that's in New Orleans, they had what they called Black business leagues. And these Black business leagues, you could not join it unless you had a business. And then those leagues worked together to capitalize each other's businesses and to work with, if there existed, the Black banks that were there to capitalize. But in most cases, they could not scale, meaning that they could capitalize enough to run a business of their own, but they couldn't franchise it really. They couldn't scale it to be a mega business. And that was the difference between Black capitalism and white capitalism. So this took me to where I want to go, which is something that Brandon touched on yesterday, which was important, but we have to understand how these things work in order to be able to apply self-help. You have to have institutions in order to support your capitalism.
Thank you.
You have to have markets that you create. And so the problem that most Black businesses run into is that even with SBA loans, they don't have a market that's strong enough to scale and institutionalize their business so that it's permanent. What they have is at best a market that is flexible and dependent upon the other Black labor that's not working for Black people. It's actually working for white people. And so that's why a lot of these businesses disappear, because we all know that Black labor is very brittle. And so if they are out of work, then some of these luxuries that support these Black businesses disappear. And I can give you story after story of Black businesses, well-intended, well-capitalized, that eventually went out of business because they didn't have the market of Black workers who would pay for those goods consistently. Now, one thing that was good that came up yesterday was the idea of, look, if we could normalize our diet, where the West African diet and the Black American diaspora's diet overlaps more, then we can create a market that's unified of what we eat. And arguably, it could be healthier than a lot of the processed foods that we eat presently, at least in the diaspora. And so, and to Brandon's credit, he's saying, hey, look, if we could farm, although these farms are going to probably be small, that we could feed ourselves. But what has happened is, when I was a kid, one of the things that gave my grandparents a lot of pride in Chicago, which is where I grew up, was these Southern farmers. Are you from the Chi, right? You probably remember this. I don't know how old you are, but over there on 71st Street and 75th Street, those Mississippi farmers would come up and they would sell their farm goods that were extra from their farms. They did that all throughout the 70s into the early 80s. And my grandparents took a lot of pride to go over there and buy from those people. That was when our Black farming community was tied to Black communities. They literally would feed us. But that's not how it is now. How it is now is Black people are driven by price, and they're driven by poor refrigeration. And so they need foods that can preserve and keep well, because in many cases, they don't always have strong refrigeration to eat fresh food all the time. And so that's why we eat a lot of the stuff that we eat and are in many cases obese. But here was where I wanted to go with it, which is funding. When you talk about funding, you have to have infrastructure to support the funding of Black business, meaning you have to have Black banks. And consistently, now my family did it all the way, my grandparents, my parents, we all had accounts in Black banks. But you have to have enough Black people doing that and maintaining it so that the capitalization of the bank is high enough that it can make loans. And that's not what most Black banks are doing. What happens is we have low amounts in our accounts because we, as a community, are not really highly paid. And the bank then has to buy a whole bunch of treasury notes to ensure they have to have reserves against the deposits, which are low. So if you have low deposits, you have to have more reserves. So then when that happens, then you can't make loans to these local businesses like what I described was happening in the South with these Black business leagues. Do you see? And Citibank and Wells Fargo and all these things, they cannot and will not replace that. Now, when Barack Obama was in office, and I've told Dynast this privately, my grandfather was, and other Black business people, were trying to get him to reform the regulations for Black banks so that they could take 2% of their reserves and loan in their community. That would expand the business. He didn't do it. And that's just the long and the short of it. I could give you the why and the how. He didn't do it. And my guess is he didn't do it because the people who donate to these people, whether it's Black, Republican or Democrat, they had a stronger interest in him not doing it than in him doing it. Do you understand? So if you're getting millions, say, from Blacks, and you're getting billions, say, from these other institutions, then you're going to go with the billions. That's just the way that the game is played, winners and losers. So this is what I wanted to get at. There are some smart ideas there, but we have to be smart about creating our own markets and working together to build a supply chain and to unify our diet so that we can actually do these things. And Dynast, your show is a big part of that. And I probably rambled more than people wanted to hear, but this is where I wanted to go with it, is to say we're on the right track. But if we don't understand why people did things in the past, then it won't make any sense. And I'll end with this.
But you're optimistic, though. You're optimistic it can be achieved.
I'm optimistic because O'Leary, I can talk to you when you're in London.
Okay.
And if you're in London and my man Complex is in Chicago and Dynast is in Atlanta and all these people that are listening in various parts and abroad, then we can put our heads together and scale.
But Philip,
and that's something
the
we can do.
the issue is the average Black American doesn't think outside of their immediate community.
Well, of course not, because they're trying to survive. They're trying to survive. Look, we have to look at what this is why I was saying to pull up some of the stats of where we are in the country and what we actually earn. People who are trying to survive aren't building markets. That's why your show is important. Your show isn't a demo for just the average Joe Black guy. It is, but it isn't. We want them to listen, to understand, and participate, but they're just trying to make it. They can't do what you're doing and going to Africa and taking people on tours. They can't take a tour. That's just not their lane. Their lane is if you build it and it makes sense, then they may support it. That's the most they can do.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a mindset. It's not only.
Can I piggyback?
I mean, that goes to,
please.
I mean, a lot of Black people in the diaspora, basically. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but we need to change the way we are. Otherwise, we're gonna be way behind, man. Time is up. Time is ticking like a time bomb at the moment.
No, it's been ticking. Here's the thing. Y'all, we got to revisit what the COVID. Well, I don't know if I can say the word now, Dynast. Is it okay to say it now, Dynast? I don't know. On YouTube?
The vid. We just say the vid.
Okay, the vid. The vid shutdown showed us what power you didn't have. They told you when your children go to school. They told you when you can work, where you can work, and who was shut down. They shut down entire industries when they felt like it. That's when you government dependent. I wasn't suffering during the shutdowns. None of my businesses suffered during the shutdown because they're not government dependent. Even though I have government contracts, we made sure we weren't government dependent before that happened. When I teach people to get their own trust and just to have them there, to do their will and trust and have it there and ready. When I teach people to have their LLCs and businesses ready, when I teach people to have their holding companies ready, what the vid showed you, regular people got regular people money. Businesses got more. If you just had your business, you were just maintaining it, you were just paying your people through it, you got way more than the average person did. So they showed you what it means to have your institution set, as Philip was saying. You got to have them set already. Stop waiting for the money to come in and have the vehicle for the money to come in. Have the vehicle ready for you to get from point A to point B at so many miles per hour or else. So we've been in a dire situation. When they shut down your job and you were sitting there worried, what am I going to do? And you had to wait for that any one of them checks. The SBA gave out the easiest loans they ever gave Black people during the vid. You never had it that good. So had you stood on institutions, had you stuck together, had you had your things together, which the people who I work with did, you would have benefited greater. And then if you taken what you got from that and invested it more. And I'm talking about, like I said, life insurance, and I'm talking about whole life insurance that you can borrow from, trust, bring your money together, asking your employees if they want to put into an employee fund together to fund things they were going to need or to fund upper insurance. Those are the things you should have had already. Stop waiting. You were already behind when the bid hit. Why are you? So right now you're only getting further behind. You were behind when you were born. If you were born and you didn't inherit things, as Philip said, my great-grandfather worked for white folks too. And he passed away with 3 properties to pass down. My family benefited from that. So if you're not getting that, then okay, have your business ready. If you don't have an LLC sitting there right now, a holding company sitting there right now, a trust sitting there right now, you don't have the vehicle to drive economically. And so, to answer Dynast's question of the show, is Black capitalism a bad check for Black America? Yes, it is. Because they're not going to train you. Louis Farrakhan said there are 3 things they would not train Black people on when it came to the college systems. 3 things: business, military science, and genetics. Those three things that you're behind on, you stand behind on, you're getting whooped. So get your economics together. Black capitalism is taught by the people who want to keep you down. The people who said they don't want you to go to school to learn those three things we said. They want you to learn to be a teacher, a minister, and things of that nature only. College was never there to train you. And matter of fact, most of the colleges, the early colleges, were built by slaves. And I don't care, look them, every Ivy League college was built by slaves, and your White House was built by slaves. You were not meant to economically get back to where they knew you came from. You were not meant to do that. So right now, if you're going to learn that black capitalism is a bad check for Black America, get you a trust, get you life insurance, whole life insurance you can borrow from, get you a holding company, make sure that trust has a will in it, because all that stuff is private, and make sure you don't do it with government paperwork. Find someone who could do it. I'll get my commercial on Diners at some point. Maybe Philip does that as well. Find someone who could do it and do it right for you and do it at a right price. It doesn't have to be too high.
Can I hop in there? Can I say something complex? Please support this brother's channel. Please support Complex's channel. You dropping dime after dime today, Complex. Bring it, brother.
No, I think it's wicked. It's wicked. Yeah, I'm listening.
I mean, I would love to hear more about the holding company. I've heard the discussion about life insurance and trusts, but I've never heard the mention of holding companies. I don't know.
Who's that speaking?
Let's make that a separate show.
Okay.
I'll reach out directly to Complex.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
But who's speaking? Is that O'Leary speaking?
Yeah, it's O'Leary. Yeah. Go ahead, Moochie. Unmute yourself, Moochie.
Hello, everyone. Yes, interesting conversation. So, I just want to at least make clear a few things that I thought I had. So capitalism, just pure definition, right? So everybody knows we're on the same page. It's just a system where the levers of the economy are in the hands of the individuals, private individuals, not the government, okay? So that's opposite like a country like Russia, where the government will be in control of all the levers of the economy, right? Now, capitalism.
Multi, that's changing. That's not all government.
But brother, I'm just contrasting capitalism and communism, please. Let me continue my train of thought.
That's right, Muchi. You're bringing it. Go ahead. Both of you guys are right.
Okay. So now, capitalism, capital, right? So that's resources. How do you get the resources? Accumulate resources, right? Like here in the US, so there's capital markets. So if you see new companies when they get formed, the big companies, they do what is called an IPO. That's initial public offering, right? And that gets done through investment banks, and guys go on the road and they raise capital through institutional investors, right? They're the ones who get the first check. And then later on, the retail investors, you and me and everybody else, we can buy shares into these companies, right? So that's how you participate in capitalism or in the overall economy, the broader economy, right? Now, the other thing I want to raise is this. I think Philip might have talked about the market being small. I think that is when Africa, if African Americans can look at Africa as a market. Now you have access to 1.3 billion people. You understand? You're not only talking about, say, 40 million that are dispersed through the 50 states. So I think that's when the link between Africa and African Americans becomes important, right? You look at Africa, what can you provide? And Africans are looking to buy a lot of things. So you can get the money here, whether through the banks, it's a cheap cost of capital, right? Whether it's loans and everything, and then you can, make your business global, and then I think you can benefit. Then the last point I want to just make is that you look at all these other groups that come here, the Indians, the Chinese, you're talking about all this Korean market and all the Korean town. These people, they practice capitalism, but the way they practice it is not principally by going to the banks. They put their resources together as a community, which is one thing that's, Black people, we don't trust each other. And a lot of times too, we have some criminal tendencies. So when we put money together, there's always somebody trying to, come up with some nice ideas and stuff like that, to try and con somebody else. But you have to be able to put money together. In Africa, like where I come from, women have this thing where they put money, mostly women, they put money together, right? they call it like a round. So they say every month when everybody gets paid, whatever however they get their money, they contribute. So if there's 5 people, maybe they put 1,000 each, right? So at the end of the month, one person has $5,000. So they have a lot of money they can buy, whether it's furniture or whatever it is that they want. And then the next time, this other person gets $5,000. So this is the way they practice some kind of capitalism, but even though it's on a small scale, but it's because they realize, oh, there's some things I can't do by myself. So we have to pull your money together. So I think what the other groups have Black people in general beat is that they know how to put money together, and then they start their businesses without waiting for Citibank or Bank of America or these big banks to get loans.
Okay, I think I'm gonna drop out, Dennis, let someone in. But yeah, amazing conversation, definitely. Larry, the brother that was speaking earlier, and Philip, Dennis, brother, love.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.
Look, Moochie, you always come in with the technical analysis, good stuff again there. I think Complex was bringing in, and Leary, you touched on it, and Dynas, we're putting it together on your show, man. I mean, I watched you twice yesterday, and 2 good analysis. The Bube brought beautiful analysis to the Andrew Tate, and then in the morning we were talking about the various things involved with capitalism. Again, it can happen. I am hopeful, O'Leary, but we have to do some of the things that Complex is talking about and that Moochie is talking about, and to be serious about those things. My point in sending this to you this morning, Dynas, was to say, look, both parties have done certain things, but they weren't actually good checks. That the Great Society that Johnson did also came with benign neglect. But what we have to see is, why did Black American business support civil rights? It wasn't necessarily because they wanted to sit at lunch counters and be able to use the same hotels as whites. That wasn't really the big motivation.
Philip, that's a great. I want you to expand on this, because that makes sense. Why would Black businesses support civil rights when their consumer base will go spend their money with the white people now?
And here's what it was, Dynas. And a lot of people are confused about this, but Malcolm X and Martin Luther King talked about this, which was what Black business wanted was access to the capital of the general market. And I touched on this in the comments yesterday when Brandon was speaking. Black Americans were paying taxes, but they had no access to the public commons of the government, particularly Black businesses. So basically what was happening was they were paying in, but they didn't get anything out. They didn't even have access to the customers. So how do they scale? And if Black people decided, hey, I don't like the shirts that Dynas is wearing, and I really dislike something O'Leary said the other day, they could kill your business.
Can I add on to that, Dynas and Philip?
Please.
So, Civil Rights Act of 1964 also gave us the HUD Act, and y'all might want to write this down. HUD Act Section 3. Y'all know Black folks benefit off Section 8 to get housing from the government, but that's Section 3. HUD Act Section 3 came from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. What it did, it said that anyone getting funds from the federal government to do any real estate or real estate building or security or travel, anything, you must give 33% to Black people, guaranteed. So in Chicago, we had started fighting for that. We had unions going against us over fighting for that. And why? Because now we have access. So we fought and we made our own unions. We made our own, and I probably shouldn't have said that on here, but oh well. We made our own unions. We made our own lobbyist committees. And we started going downstate. We started going to the federal government and demanding our 33%. What happened was, majority of my community, what's called the housing projects, now has seven new millionaires. because we came together. I ran a community center. I taught civics and law to the community, business, and then we paid for some of the businesses. And also we found out Chicago Housing Authority paid for some of the setup fees. Or we also found out that the SBA pays for setup fees, and we took advantage of it. And so now we became, so we made an organization called the Enforcement Initiative for HUD Act Section 3 to guarantee us 33%. And we had to shut down some of these sites that were getting money and not putting us on, because that's what they do. If you try to build in an Irish neighborhood in Chicago, forget about it. They coming outside with axe handles. They're shutting stuff down. If they're not getting some of that money, they shutting it down. You have to have the same mentality, because the government said, so since 1964, it was actually an enforcement behind it, but no one knew about it until 2000, 2002. We are just utilizing these things, and it's crazy. And so I started going back into that part of the business, and the part of the business helping the community out and all that stuff. I was suffering. I said, man, I sat here and helped all these people become millionaires. What about me? So now the question is, what about you?
Now, facts, this is what Dynast, I'm trying desperately to promote, is what Complex is talking about, and less energy spent on whose political party is running for what. That to me is a waste of time, because they both agree that we all should be on the bottom. We should be on the bottom in the United States. We should be on the bottom in Africa. That's what they agree upon. Whatever other political disputes they have, they know at the end of the day, they want us to be the floor and the worst standard of whatever is happening anywhere. And as long as we are focused on, oh man, we got to get Stacey Abrams elected, or we got to get, whoever the hell elected, then we're not focusing on what Complex is talking about, which is getting whole life insurance, setting up a trust so that your kids can avoid your property, whatever little stuff you accumulated, having to go through probate, just the basics. We got to go back to the basics, fundamental football, fundamental basketball. And we're not doing it. We're all wrapped up in what rappers doing what, and, this kind of stuff, which is great distraction, but it's not helping us build families. And that's where I was going to go with Moochie's thing, which is the Susu thing, particularly for Black Americans. I don't know if it's a real thing because of something you said, which is, I don't know that we trust each other enough. And there are good reasons why we don't. But what you may be able to trust is somebody that you're blood related to, which is your family, whether it's your wife or your children or your cousins, maybe as a foundational starting point to build from there. And then if you have families that trust each other, then maybe they can work together. Or what I was saying to O'Leary, in the South, you had to have a Black business that was functional and operating to be part of a Black business league. You couldn't be in it if your business was trash. That just defeated the point. So maybe we can do a small micro build from that,
I think Dinah said he want to do that on another show, Philip.
Okay, I just was revisiting.
No, I'm just saying, no, keep talking.
No, you're right, brother. You're right.
Business league, because when I went to Sierra Leone, that's the first thing I did. When Dinah's got my family citizenship, first thing we did was open up a business league. You coming over here, you traveling, let's get together in the business league. And people need to understand that's 501c, what is it, Philip? 501c4 business league?
I believe so.
501
Can I just say, Complex, I like you, brother.
Appreciate you. Now I'm just trying to help the people, because I taught this for free. I was going for community center teaching this for free. And I'm still teaching it for free, but to serious people, because some people don't get it. But I'm gonna keep educating them. I'm not gonna stop because they don't get it, because we need to get it. Like Dinah, did you know that Kappa Alpha Psi had a what's that kind of bank called? It's not a bank. Kappa had a credit union. Did you know that, Dinah?
I did.
Yeah. Prince Hall Mason.
Is it still active, the credit union?
No, 2012 it went out. It's a
Yeah,
newspaper
yeah, I
article.
remember
You
they
can
used to
Google
have
it.
it.
It'll tell you what happened. But Kappa had one, Alpha Phi Alpha had one. Prince Hall Mason still have one, actually. Prince Hall Mason has been running credit unions since credit unions have been around. And people don't know they can go to Prince Hall Mason lodges and deal with them tax-free. And they become a member of their credit union. We can make credit unions easier than we can make a bank. It takes 10 people with good credit to make a credit union. You would think, well, good credit and no unlawful backgrounds. That's always the trap. Once they give you a felony, it messes with everything. But we got to come together, man, and if we can't get a community, you can get a community trust before a credit union. You can make a private trust and make it a community trust. You can deal with REITs, real estate investment trust, which is liquid money. Dynas, you deal with real estate. Real estate investment trust is a best vehicle, if you ask me, to keep it liquid. For instance, you don't have to be a landlord when you got a REIT. When you got a real estate investment trust, ain't no rent to rent, month to month. Your stuff are all liquid, bro. Ain't nobody threatening you. They don't know who you are. So I'm gonna pause there. Hey, Gas them up. What's up, bro?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
And I just wanted to say, you know what, this brother Complex is sharing a lot of great information. And so the one thing I would just emphasize, especially when people get together and say, hey, this is what we're going to come together and do this or that, right? Maybe you're going to get tax exemption or whatever you're trying to build. You have to put systems in place. And then do not let one person hold the money. Have systems in place, and maybe you have 3 or 4 signatories to the account where the money is deposited, right? So that you don't fall into these situations where one person just takes off and runs with the money and things like that. So you have the ideas, sit down together, and then create the structures and make sure there's good, strong internal controls, right? So that the organization or whatever money you're putting together is not subject to the whims of just 1 or 2 individuals. Because I see that a lot of times where something starts off very good, but one person is very domineering or dominating in the whole thing, and then everybody puts trust in one person. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. That's why, all these big institutions, they have a lot of leaders. They have a CEO, but there's a lot of things in place to put for the checks and balances, so that sometimes he has to get approval from, say, the board or whatever it is, right? So I just my 2 cents on that.
Can I got one more thing, Dynas, real quick, because I'd be remiss not to say it. Can I please, Dynas?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna pass it.
I'm gonna see for Gas them up and everybody else who knew. So it's tax refund season. Some of you all are about to get money back. Please invest it in the things that were said to you. You got other choices other than LegalZoom. Like my company, I'm sending Dynas my new commercial. We build these things from ground up for you all. That's why I know the knowledge of it. I've used them all on myself, my family, everybody. I started with family and self first and learned it. And I've gone to college for these things. So it's tax season. You get this refund back. Forget that furniture. Forget that them new clothes. Take care of the stuff you got to do, eating all that, do all that. But if you please, find some other people, at least in your family, so whoever you trust, your friends you trust, get together, get you the trust, get you the holding company, get you the LLC, and do it right, and make your members, get your members, do it right, take that money, get y'all business together, get the bylaws done properly, with all the proper articles, all the proper EIN and all that stuff, and get those things together. Because right now, and I do want to know about from Illiterate and anybody else in UK, do you all get, like tax breaks, tax refund, employee retention credits? Like, that's something I am interested in, international business and international taxation and what you all get back, so to see that you all can benefit as well from the information. So please share, y'all, if y'all can.
Hey, Complex, check the back chat. Check the back chat when you get a chance.
I'm about to look at it.
Yeah, no, I'm going to say something might be a little controversial. I'm not, I don't believe, quote unquote, capitalism is what Black people need. as it's properly or as it's commonly defined. I believe we need communal merchants, and I think we need to have a communal merchant class where the community approaches this system that we're in as merchants, and we approach it from a communal perspective, and however that means. And so I think it does involve starting at the level as complex as saying where families are putting together their LLCs, they're putting together their trusts, even their nonprofits, right? IKEA, one of the largest companies in the world, the structure.
Oh, we lost you, gas him up.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it went out, but go ahead. We hear you now.
Yeah. I was saying IKEA is structured as a nonprofit, and the founder purposely structured it that way so that his family and his heirs could receive a lot of those monies tax-free to avoid, estate taxes. But that's a whole nother conversation. So I just think that we have to start, as Mucci was saying, thinking like engineers, right? We have to create systems. So when we create systems, then we'll be able to move together. I think this individual lone wolf, it just doesn't, it hasn't worked. It doesn't work. Even if you look at the animals in Africa, for the most part, right? They say the lion is the king of not the jungle, is the king of the plains, but whatever. They hunt as a pack. They hunt as a collective, whether it's the hyenas or the wild dogs, and they hunt as a collective. So I just find it interesting that when it comes to Black people, they tell us that the secret or the way forward is this individual effort. When, all the institutions that are exploiting us, they're pretty much communist institutions. They're just a bunch of people with collective interest who've come together to exploit, the efforts of people around the world. I was saying this yesterday on Dynasty Show that, when you look at things like the structural adjustment program, it was a communal effort to rob the middle class of non-Westerners around the world. Ironically, that same energy, like Malcolm X said, the chickens coming home to roost, is now being unleashed on the same Westerners, and they can't handle it, right? So I just think we have to not, to me, fall for the whole myth of that lone wolf capitalist. No, I think we got to work together. That means people got to be honest. We got to look at ourselves as fiduciaries. I use that word all the time. We got to think in a fiduciary capacity. And as Mucci was saying, you can't just be the big man on the block and you just want to take everything. And there's a whole bunch of issues, right? I don't want to say anyone's names, but there's just too many examples of what I call Negro capitalism, where you got these Black people that just, it's like this cult of personality. And then at the end of the day, it's just this game. So you can spend.
Jesse Jackson.
What I can, hey, you said a name, Jay Morrison and his real estate fund, allegedly, right? Let's look into the history of that. You got the brothers who were, I think, I forgot their names, but one of them was something Keys, again, allegedly. Well, no, again, I'm not just talking about the politicians. I'm talking about the modern day people you see on Facebook and Instagram coming out there telling you, yeah, Black business and this and this. Like I said, Jay Morrison allegedly was one of them. This 19 Keys and these Black brothers, allegedly, they were like 4 of them, and they all got these fancy cars, and they telling you, a lot of them, they're not held accountable. And then when things go left, they tell you, well, you should have researched. You should have did this. That's not what a leader has to take responsibility. You got to make sure that everybody's going to eat, or everybody's going to at least be sustained. And I think quite often I've seen so-called Black capitalism and Black entrepreneurship have this, there's no empathy. There's no communal outlook. It's just, no, I'm just here to get this money. You're going to buy my product, and that's Black capitalism. I don't see how that, works for us as a collective, but I'll stop talking.
No, you said everything right, gas them up, though. Like, everything you said is on point. Even, Dynasty, you be laughing at the Black Native Americans that I used to be a part of. Their leadership does the same thing, bro, and leave everybody hanging when stuff really hit the fan. And I watched 26 people go to jail trying to mess with usufruct and REITs and things they didn't understand. Right now, Arizona, California, and Nevada have a program called Legal Document Assistant or Legal Document Preparer, to where you take a test and I pass that test. You could be like LegalZoom, where you can actually legally, as a court officer, build people's businesses to where you are fiduciary held to the highest standards with bonding. And I'm waiting on Arizona to go ahead and pass my license. I went to California, LA, to get my other one, but that's another avenue I'm giving y'all. Legal document preparer, legal document assistant. It don't take that long to do. You'll learn a lot. They give you a booklet. You study it. You can go to classes, or you can hit me up at www.adacademies.com. I will put you on at no charge, so you can become your own, for those who want to learn, your own LegalZoom and teach this and do this for your family and learn how to do proper power of attorneys as well. I left out power of attorneys, but Dinah said another show. It's so much. It's a mindset. It is a mindset, and we are behind. And they trained us to be behind, but we can't blame them, because if you heard this on SEARCH of UHURU today, you are no longer able to say you're innocent. You are no longer able to say you're a child in that knowledge. You now have heard it. Go back over the video as many times as possible. Keep liking it, keep subscribing, keep sharing it, and keep studying it. You heard these things on his show. Remember, Dinah's put this out. And you know I always promote Dinah's show, so Dinah's me promoting you again. So it is what it is. All right,
you have an online notary? Real Deal Financial, go ahead.
Quick question. Do you have an online notary? Because that's something I need ASAP when it comes to my credit repair business. And by the way, I'm a realtor. I'm here in LA. I'm a realtor. When it comes to what I do, preferably I help hedge funds. I help investors to be able to get properties. So when it comes to what I feel what's capitalism, I would say Black capitalism, I don't think it's done enough due to aspects of the stats. Like, we have a whole bunch of people that's on the government teat that is literally on 4 or 5 generations of welfare. Like, can we be able to have at least some more business grants to those people? Can we give them a one-time allotment of 30, 40,000? That can be lobbied easily. So when it comes to like my statement, one, I don't think it's practiced enough, especially digital capitalism, where you got people that are in IT, people are doing digital marketing, high ticket sales, building products, like you guys said earlier, being the engineers of the future. So
I just want to ask everybody a question for you.
I didn't hear his last part, Gas. We got to cut him off. Say that again, Real Deal Financial.
No, I just said I don't think it's practiced enough. And the ones that do try to practice it, I don't think they even search enough business acumen books to be able to do consistent business. But I'm done.
Dennis, I want to ask everybody on the panel a question. And again, I'm not a capitalist, nor am I a Marxist, but this is my question. When you look at, for example, they said, the society, it says Black Lives Matter, and people are fighting. Then I'm not talking about the organization, but just the statement alone that Black life has worth. And then, people say things like, particularly like, on the East Coast, I'm from the East Coast, and they'll say, man, back in the days, you could have bought a brownstone in Brooklyn and Harlem, and now it's worth this. But I think, and this is what I think we're not understanding. It wasn't until, because then when you had those brownstones, they were pretty much the equivalent of trap houses now in the South. They were run down crack houses. That's where, all kind of squatters were in. You couldn't give those houses away for free, those brownstones back then. And it's only until the so-called gentry move in and zoning laws start to change and you have more police put in, where the people whose lives do matter move in, that you start to see value be brought to the community. So you can imagine if you owned a property, let's say 4 blocks away from one of those brownstones, you could have put a swimming pool in your property. You could have put a helicopter pad on your property. The value still would it still wouldn't have gone up, because you're still held down by the community that surrounds you. right? Even today, when you own these properties, there's examples of people who've gotten appraisals when you're African American, and the appraiser comes in and appraises your property at one level, but then you bring somebody else that's not your ethnic group, right? And the property somehow gets appraised much more higher. So what I'm saying is, are we willing to contend with the fact that in this game, the buyout, right? Capitalism, buyers and sellers, the buyout often at times is at the hands of the people who we're trying to escape. So we might have to contend with, hey, listen, this thing, we might just have to, be comfortable not getting the $1 million trillion buyout. We might just have to be comfortable and content with where we are. Because the real crux of the matter is, until enough of our people have that disposable consumption, we don't have the value, whether it's in the eyes of the state or in the economics, whether it's bank accounts or wealth. So I'm trying to say, like, are we comfortable knowing that, hey, listen, we're not going to be able to just enjoy capitalism the way other groups can because they have access to things and the system rewards them? Are we comfortable with that? Just doing business amongst ourselves and not necessarily getting to $1 trillion valuation? I don't know if that makes sense.
Hold on. Let Wisdom Never Sleeps. Go ahead and answer that. Wisdom Never Sleeps.
How's everybody doing? It's good to hear a lot of powerful, knowledgeable Black men always speaking from education from different areas and really putting things together. I just want to really come on and say that we have to be careful to keep speaking in the ether about we not trusting one another, because every time we speak that, it keeps living. It gets bigger and more alive. We have to be careful on what the words have power. Life and death is in the power of that tongue. And so even though we've been taught and to be separate and all that, and pat on the back from the others for being individuals and all these things, we must start speaking and thinking the things that we want and speak it until it happens, because it's going to start small. Because there are people working as a unit. There are Black men, Black women working as a unit. It may be small and unseen, but it is there. And so we have to always be careful on the words we say, even though we may feel it's true, but we have to start saying, as we work together, as we come in more trust to each other, we have to bring that forward. Not everybody's ever going to get that, but just be careful on what we're speaking. Because I remember as Dinah started talking about the real estate ventures, and then he started the trips, and he kept speaking the things that he wanted to do, it kept happening and growing and things like that, adding trips. So he did it first and spoke it to share with everyone else. And that's what we must do. So let's be careful on keep always saying, even when my sons tell me, well, Pops, it's hard to trust Black people. I said, don't do that, because you are one of them that they may not trust you. So you do business with people, period. And so if they don't do good business, you can rate them the way you want, have a conversation with them to do better. But still, it's not just the color of their skin that causes that. It's the mentality that's been taught. So if we have to change it, we have to give the opportunity and speak that, hey, we have powerful people, knowledgeable people, lost people, and as we revive ourselves and as we come together, as we work together, as we build together. So that's what I really wanted to come on to say, because I'm enjoying all of the information, all the powerful stuff that's going on and talked about. But let's just be careful with that going forward. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes, but I have to give just a small rebuttal to that. I understand your position, but we have a lot of our people who are naive, and they will believe anything and everything that somebody with a slick tongue can say. Okay, it's a noble idea. But look at the situation in Jamaica right now. Usain Bolt, he had about $13 million in some investment firm, right? And now they say he's got $13,000 actual money in his bank account, in his investment account, right? So blind faith, Black people, we cannot afford to have blind faith, because guess what? A Black person losing $1,000 is going to hit different than another person who already has got a lot of resources. We have to work together, but we have to put First of all, you have to do the work, structures. You have to put the structures in place. Don't simply hand over your money to somebody based on, you have the structure. Like, what are we going to do with the money? How is the money held? How does it get withdrawn? Who needs to? How many people need to say? All I'm saying is we have to work together, but it's important to have structures in place. And we have guys who are lawyers. They help when you set something like that up to write the things that are necessary, right? So that whatever you
But
say is going to be successful.
Let me correct something. You are missing what I said. You are doing when you said people are naive, you're taking what I said incorrectly. I did not say not calling out those people. Just like Gassama was talking about the so-called conscious community people, all those people that take advantage of that. They play on the black people. I get the naivete about a lot of black people. I also get the lack of knowledge, lack of receiving truth and facts. I understand all that. I said you call those people out. What I am saying, be careful on how you speak about always saying black people never trust each other. That's different from saying Usain Bolt missed their money or someone took advantage of someone and naive. That's different. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be careful on what you put out into the ether, into this earth, because your words will always manifest itself. That's what I'm saying. You have to understand what I'm saying.
No, I agree with the elder right there. Definitely, we have to be very careful on how our words frame our mental departure points. But I think because I guess no one wanted to answer the question, but I'm putting it again. Let me. I think looking at Usain Bolt, right? Of course, it's pure greed. But I think part of the problem of what I've seen with black entrepreneurship or black capitalism is I think we don't want to acknowledge that we don't have the scale. And we don't have the scale. So what ends up happening is that people bite more than they can chew, or they push to try to do something that you would need a large scale to do it. And since we don't have that large scale, that's when you start seeing all kind of, chicanery and all kind of frivolous and just, criminal activity. So I again,
give me that question again. Give me the question.
I'm saying that are people who are engaged in black business prepared to understand that right now, economically speaking, black lives don't matter because we don't even have the capacity to really engage financially compared to other ethnic groups in this nation, right? So even when you look at like insurance, you pull up the actuarial science and you look at, okay, the death rates and the birth rates and all these things and how they're gauging and the morbidity factors and all these things that they're using to determine the rate of an insurance policy, whether you're black, white, or whatever, you'll see that, black people are at the tail end of that. So that doesn't mean you can't do business. It just means you won't have the type of scale. And I've told this to Dynast, right? Like if he wants to sell his documentary, if he sells it to a black network compared to, let's say, if he sold it to Amazon or Netflix, the bigger bag is with Amazon or Netflix. But is he comfortable saying, you know what, let me keep it in-house? And I'm not saying he should say what he'll do here, but I'm just trying to say, are we comfortable understanding that if you want the bag, the Robert Johnson sellout package, right, when they get you out of the way, you kind of have to look to the Mzungus. You don't have it amongst our people.
Gas them up. You don't have to gas them up. You don't have to.
Let me answer that. Let me answer that.
Damn.
Yeah.
Let me answer.
No. When I say sellout, I didn't say sellout in the sense that he sold that. I'm saying that when you create a product, the only person that can buy you out at the top market rate that you're looking for in this game of capitalism, 90% of the time aren't people that look like me and you.
I'm about to see Robert Johnson. I'm about to see Robert Johnson next week. So if you talk about BET, Robert Johnson, Dynast and our frat brother, I would definitely have this conversation with him for you, and I will call you in front of him.
No, I wasn't calling you a sellout.
No, I'm not talking. Gas them up. I'm not talking about that. I'm not mad at you for that.
Well, okay, hold on. Let's pass it. Was another sleep? Go ahead, respond.
My bad.
Okay, so yes, we do have a problem with we're not ready for scaling up as a collective people. That's true. And almost every major business, media and all, even in Africa in some places, they end up selling to the Mzungus. That is a fact. That's where the money comes from, because no one else black is buying those businesses, whether it's Oprah or anybody else. They partner up with those. And when my son first started doing music and he wanted me to manage, the first thing he and other writers sitting telling me was, we got to write because we need that white money. I said, why? Well, that's what we need to promote. See, so I see it on every level. Many things y'all talk about, I walk through it on different levels. So the thing of it, that's the mindset of when you got FUBU, the Jay-Z's, everybody else, when they build these companies up, they are sold to people that do not look like us. And so the scaling part is a real issue, and holding on to things. Now, there are some that says, I'm going to stay with my people no matter what. And how are you ready to scale, or ready to stay mediocre? Or are you good where you are till someone else come along? Are you trying to pitch to, do we have a body of billionaires, millionaires collectively that are ready to buy businesses? That's where the other problem comes at. There's not a unit of successful people bringing their own body together. Like the guy was speaking earlier about creating that network of people. You got 10 people for this, for the credit union. You got credit. You got no felonies, all these things. So that, I was on a plane ride, my first trip to Boston. All the Clemson people was there because they was going to play Boston College. So I sat with these Mzungu people. We just started talking. And he asked me what I do at the time, working at Bank of America. Now, I want you to listen to me, what he said. And he was talking about businesses. And I said, so he said, well, you flying up to work. I got time off because I own businesses. And I asked him, okay, what business you own, or how did you get started? He and 8 other his white male friends, they came together, and everybody knew what they was bringing together, whether it was credit, income, old money, whatever. And they started buying one business together, 2 business, and they ended up with enough businesses together to make enough money individually to buy some of their own businesses. But they came together, and that's what we are not doing at a level that will cause people to go in and buy BET, buy FUBU or any other company, buy the next grocery store chain. So it's not being passed on to a larger monetary people. So the scaling part is an issue when it comes to the next level. It's that, yeah. And so we're not ready for that if we don't have anybody to pitch those companies to.
I agree. Can I say this really quick?
Wait, can I respond really quickly? And because I need to bounce out of here. To Wisdom Speaks, do you mind, Great Deal Financial?
No problem. No problem.
Thank you, sir. Wisdom never speaks, or never sleeps. Sorry, that you always have something thoughtful to say. I want to try to tie what Gasimup was saying and you're saying together with what we know to be true. And Dynas, if you have the video, look, something that Brother Abube has talked about, at least for a year or two that I've been watching him, is these regional currencies and inter-African trade. And I think it ties together with what Robert Johnson has done and can do. Robert Johnson built a complex in Liberia with a theory that it would be an anchor for other tourism and infrastructure to be built. And he ran into some of the same things that we struggle with in Africa, with title and with the community that was there not necessarily being 100% supportive of that huge resort that he bought. Who did he wind up selling it to? I believe a group of Ghanaians and their group. But this is what I wanted to say to you, Wisdom Never Sleeps, which is, look, we can buy if we have the 5 hard currencies that Abube has been talking about forever. And one of the foremost things that's right in front of us right now that we're not focusing on, Dynas, I'm going to make a special request that we do a show just on Congo and that MOU over coltan and cobalt. That is the only resource that is sourced in Congo that is not sourced anywhere else in the world. Congo just joined the East African Trade Union. So in theory, the currency, the unified currency that they're supposed to be putting together could be backed by cobalt, could be backed by coltan. Nowhere else in the world can these batteries, lithium batteries, be built without cobalt, and it can only be gotten from one country, and that country is Congo. Now, if we have access to the currency in Congo and it becomes a hard currency because it's part of the East African Trade Union of trade intra ourselves, then we can scale. The problem that, and this goes back, and that's why I wanted to jump in to what I'm talking about winners and losers. Within their system that they built, their capitalism puts African currencies at the bottom. So when you exchange dollars for whatever currency you want to talk about, the Naira, whatever currency you want to talk about that's in Africa, they are getting a ton of their money for $1. And then they can't use their money as reserves in their banks. And a similar kind of thing is what's going on in Black America, where we're getting dollars, but we get very few dollars. If you are an unskilled Black labor, of which 70% of our people are, then you're not earning any more than $12 to $15 an hour. That's not enough to build a bank, folks. That's not enough. We have to figure out a way to improve the currency and asset allocation. And if you've looked, it's all over Twitter at these cobalt stones and coltan stones. It is the leverage point right now that we should be talking about, and making sure that you've got videos of Black African boys primarily on their knees, mining with their hands this cobalt, one of the most valuable resources in the world. Every electric car, every electric battery, every lithium dependent device, your cell phone, all are dependent upon that cobalt. And yet you have African boys mining for it with their hands by the thousands. And you have Black Americans who are completely oblivious to this is going on. This is where we should be leveraging to work together with our brothers in Africa to try to build markets of intertrade amongst ourselves, and then plug that into the capitalist system that they have. But if we can't trade amongst ourselves and build amongst ourselves, then we will be at the mercy of being the floor of their market. And that's a lose-lose for us. So my answer to Gassim is we shouldn't be satisfied with it. We should be working on our own to build our own within ourselves, which we totally can do, because within ourselves, we have some of the most valuable stuff. That's just the bottom line. But we're not leveraging it properly. And Abube was talking on legal stuff now, but I wish he could go back and talk about that regional currency stuff, because that's critical to all of us that are trying to build anything. Thank you, guys.
So
Thank
you speaking from the real quick from the trade, I got to ask you, isn't that, see, when Russia decided to say you're going to buy oil back by the ruby versus the dollar, it causes their ruble or whatever it's called to now have more value. So with the cobalt in Africa, why is it so hard for to say, just like all the other minerals, we're going to have our now, whatever it's called in Congo, backed by the cobalt versus the dollar? Then you have everybody have to buy in that currency. It's not just the trading, it's also how you're going to have that rich product that's only there in the world, and you still got an American dollar have more value for that than your own money, instead of having your currency backed by the cobalt. And now everybody that comes to buy it have to buy it in your currency.
Can I respond to that?
Then we can do, that's a question I'm asking, because that's on a government level as well.
Wait, can I respond real quick? I know Moochie's got something complex and Gassama. Let me just really quick. The problem, listen, there's a reason why Congo has had civil wars and an assassination of their leader who wanted to nationalize their minerals since the 1950s. And part of it is an uncomfortable conversation about Uganda and about our favorite person, Kagame, right? Because part of their foreign investment is linked to the destabilization of Congo and what corruption is. And actually that brings me to something I've wanted to talk about for a moment, which is, why does corruption exist? In my experience, and it's limited, I'm not, king of trade or anything like that, but the little work that I did do in it, corruption exists because big stakeholders don't want to have to send their investments through a whole bunch of people like a Congress or a parliament. They exist because they want to send it through 5 people that they trust, whatever that group is in a various country. That's why it exists. Because if I can just pay 5 people to get my investment done and then they'll protect it for me, then it's a lot easier than having to be responsive to the people of the Congo, for example, with wisdom that never sleeps. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please. And I'm going to drop off. Thank you, guys.
All right. So, I can speak a bit
Take care. Goodbye.
About the minerals, why the governments in Africa. I'm from Southern Africa, so we have a lot of these minerals. There's 2 sides. One, most of the minerals coming out of Africa are in their ore state. It's called ore. Okay, so they are not refined. Okay, so and then you get these European and American companies that are in the continent mining, right? They don't want to put refineries in country because they know that's going to add value to the minerals and bring more money to the host countries. So how do you solve that? The governments, if the African governments were wise enough and were saving money, they could maybe get into some partnership, because when you talk about, say, platinum refineries and all that, you're talking about multi-billion US dollar investments. They cost a lot of money. That's a fact. So now, if the government can somehow find a way to get into partnership with these companies and put up some money, these companies are happy to just take out the ore, which is maybe 5-10% of what the finished product is when it gets to the West. So these Western companies have an interest to just take it as it is, just raw as it is, and just take it out. Yes, I do believe this, which is what Zambia and Congo is trying to do, and Zimbabwe, my country where I'm from too. They're starting now to say, hey, you know what? They want to limit or block the export of raw minerals, right? But they face a lot of opposition, because let me tell you something. Right now, there's a case at the World Trade Organization, right? There's a country, I'm trying to guess, think which country it is. But essentially what it revolves around is that the World Trade Organization is trying to say, if you limit the export of the raw material, that's non-competitive. You see, this is how the world order now is right now, because these are rules that are coming from the Western capitals, right? They are saying, they're almost trying to make it illegal for companies, for countries to say, hey, you cannot, we do not want to export our raw materials.
One thing I want to say, I just heard of this and I'm looking more into it. When he brought up about all the children that's out there, each company that purchase or makes anything that's with the cobalt or any other raw material, they sign an agreement. It's down in their list of things they don't supposed to do. And one of the things they have in their contracts is that they're not supposed to be benefiting or bringing any raw material, making anything from any country that has child labor being used like that, or slave labor. And so that was just brought up because when they really showed all those hundreds and hundreds or thousands of kids out there doing that, and they was talking about how each contract of all these companies that utilize any raw material does not supposed to be you buying that and put it in their products if it has child labor. So now it's a major investigation starting to go on with all the companies that utilizes those products, like those minerals.
Yeah, and they always try to get around that because they will have those laws in place. But one thing that happens is that you will have a company which is conducting proper business with no kids, right? But they will buy on this, they will buy on the backside the products that are being made by the kids. You see, and that's how they try to get
Well,
around.
Mochi,
And
that's what I'm trying to say. I was saying this yesterday. African leaders, so-called African leaders, don't have the will, nor do they have the strength, the imagination, or the testicular fortitude and the vaginal strength to stand up and say enough is enough. It's much easier for an African leader in 2023 to go along, have some property in France or property in Israel, your side chick is cool, you get your access to your little Euro girls, and you travel to America, you go to Connecticut, you go to these places, and you enjoy a good life. You have some money in the Cayman Islands and Panama, and it's much easier to do that than to say, no, we're going to take a stand. And like you just said, the African to create those industries. You see, that's why I've always said, me personally, I don't believe Africa has natural resources. No. What they should be saying is the people who exploit us say Africa has natural resources, because we built some of the biggest forms of so-called wealth without extracting resources from the land in that manner. But that's neither here nor there. That's the past, right? We're here today. We're extracting resources. I'm using a cell phone that is probably most likely taking resources from those young men's blood, sweat, and tears, unfortunately. With that said, we have to take into account, that's why I said the real economic situation, and not just look at the few outliers. We have to look at the real economic situation on the ground. The truth for me, I can only speak about Nigeria. Most African countries don't even have the capacity to service debt or to raise debt. Their ability to create taxation where they're taxing the citizens is almost non-existent. They don't even have the cloud capacity for it, the storage. I say it all the time. People think I'm lying. You walk into some banks in Nigeria, they still, not saying that they're not putting things on the computer, but they still have pen and paper and notebooks. This is a fact. You go to Lagos Island, walk into any bank and just look in the back, you'll still see they have notebooks with pen and paper where they've kept records. Now, heaven forbid there's a fire, that's an issue. So what I'm saying is that we have to acknowledge that we don't have the taxation models in place yet to properly collect tax revenues from the citizens. When you have that taxation, now you can start floating those bonds. Because now you can say to any investor, whether they be foreign or domestic, hey, listen, and that's the magic of the U.S. System. The U.S. system is basically, I can sell you what is a junk bond technically, but I call it a treasury because the American taxpayer is the most, in terms of collecting. Well, Trump was trying to bankrupt the IRS, but the American taxpayer is on record for you can't escape the IRS. Just to make it simple. Your Social Security, your sales, everything you do goes back to taxation in some way, somehow. So now they can say, hey, we have cash flow as a nation. So by my treasury, you know that these taxpayers are always going to be here to pay whatever it is I'm floating. African nations have to be able to do that. And for right now, I don't know that many African nations that have the capacity. Maybe South Africa, but I don't see that many. So when we can start doing that, now we can say, okay, we can meet someone and say, you know what, we can float some sort of bond to create the factory. So like you said, the minerals are not taken in their ore state. They're now manufactured. Now, when that happens, keep in mind, this is geopolitics. That will be seen as an act of war, Moochie. It's not just business, and that's why I'm not convinced with the whole capitalism thing. That is an act of war, because do you know what that will do? If you say, I'm going to take $10 billion and just give to the Congo or give to this place and produce a factory where or a proper mining center where it's no longer ore, it's now a finished product, guess what? You have to pay those workers, workers' comp, you have to pay them a good wage, you have to take care of them, all these things. If you give, then that means an iPad is no longer $500 for 64 gigs. An iPad is now $5,000 because you have to factor in those costs. Do you think America And the politicians and the senators are going to be happy when the citizens start losing their minds that iPads are $5,000. So this is the fact. You get what I'm saying, Moochie?
But Gaston, I hear you, but also think of it. Think about it. The people around the world, they still pay expensive prices for the iPhones, right? And they tolerate that. So Congo produces about 70%. They have 70% of the cobalt production in the world. So I mean, they are a global market leader. So I mean, but again, it's all complicated, right? Most of these minerals, if you look at where the prices are set,
no, but Moochie, are you acknowledging that is an act of war? If you're in charge of, no, Moochie, it's not about you don't know. Listen, Moochie, if you are in charge of Congo right now, wait, I'm just saying, if you are in charge of Congo, I just want you to acknowledge this. I want you to see this, Moochie. If you are in charge of Congo right now, wait, Moochie, listen. Wait, no, Moochie, look at this. If you're in charge of Congo right now and you do what you say you want to do, you are going to be seen as an act of war against the United States. Forget all the handshakes and being friendly and having.
Gassima,
okay, go ahead.
Gassima, wait a second. That's not the only issue, okay? It's not just the only issue. This is what I'm trying to expand on, okay? The issue I see is that African governments, right, even when they have the best intentions, we do things in isolation. Again, it comes to this group think. If all African countries would say, hey, this is what we're doing, there is no act of war. But the problem is that when one country does something, it's too small to withstand all the pressures that are then put on it, right? But if all countries in Africa will say, hey, you know what, let's really be putting on a fund to say, hey, our minerals are going to be refined on the continent. Let's put the investments in. There will be no act of war. There will be no act of war at all. But the problem is, each government is doing its own thing, and then these leaders are getting corrupted.
Based on what you said earlier.
Can I close out real quick, y'all? I got to go tend to my children. Can I say something? This is complex.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is my closeout. Listen, that's why I said when Philip was talking earlier, Muammar Gaddafi, he pushed all of that. And the world allowed them to do something that was illegal. Because it's actually illegal to kill a head of state. And they did it. And he was trying to get all of Africa together to do so. So, Moochie, I hear what you're saying, but I also see what they're doing. And I'm just going to say it that way. And in closing, spiritually, because I always got to do something spiritual. I'm an African spiritualist, and I'm going to go spiritual in the name of Olorun, Olodumare. So spiritually, look, a trust was given to you, and the will was given to you by whatever you believe in. So if Shango is your spirit, or if Mami Wata is your spirit, if Jesus is your spirit, that is your trustee. If you read the Bible, that is your will, and it is exempt by government standards of America, at least, and partially, I think, the UK, when you're doing business. So, spiritually, when you open these things, and it has a religious value to it, I'm going to tell you have extra protection. Because in America, there's a separation of church and state that pretty much gives the church the same powers as the state. A church is exempt without having to apply to the IRS for exemption. However, the church is best off at least getting the IRS to acknowledge them. And the IRS calls everything, including atheists, y'all heard me right, any group, think tank that moves together to the IRS, and when they notice them, are acknowledged as church. When you put that power on there, you have another layer of protection. So your will, your Bible, your Quran, and most written books mention inheritance laws. Read them, learn them. Trusts were invented trust became more prominent during the Crusades, because when the soldiers went off to war, either the crown watched, if you on the side of the crown, they watched your stuff. And if you're on the side of Islam, the imam watched your stuff until you came home. And if you didn't come home from war, they gave it to your family without courts, per se. So, learn your spirituality, rule by your spirit. You won't have a problem. And for those who read the Bible, when it says no weapon formed shall prosper, what it means is no weapon formed in this physical shall prosper against the spirit. Lead by your spirit at most and have that protection. And I appreciate you all. You can find me African Diaspora Academies on YouTube or www.adacademies.com, where I teach these things. Thank you all.
Peace, Complex. Definitely, definitely what was needed to be said about the spiritual. Definitely, brother. But Moochie, I'm trying to tell you, and I think the Elder Wisdom wants to say something, but I'm just saying, Moochie, I'm not saying I don't want to use naive, but it like Complex just gave example of Gaddafi. When you look, and that's why I'm not convinced by the whole capitalist thing, because for me, when you play that game, I guess the brother dropped off, the elder dropped off, but when you play that game of capitalism, it's not just all handshakes and friendly smiles. The gentleman, for example, I'll give you one example. There was a guy who allegedly he invented a car that can run a meeting. He ran out of the meeting, said they're trying to kill me, they poisoned me, and he collapsed and died. And nothing happened. You get what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that if they don't work as a collective, like Sankara was saying, I'm trying to say that it's still going to be a fight. And you're going to have a fight on your hands if you are doing anything to make goods relatively more expensive for the American and Western consumer.
So
You're going to have a fight on your hands.
Let me ask you this. So are you saying that African governments and people should fold their hands and say, hey, it is what it is. We're gonna have to sell them at a cheap price or whatever they want to pay it. I mean, how about Saudi Arabia recently when the gas prices were high? Biden told the Saudi people like, hey, you need to increase your production so that the oil price goes down. They refused. There was no war. So why can't Africans be confident enough to be able to do that?
Well, again, here's the thing. Biden, to me, that was a lot of just political show and political theater, because I don't know why he would be asking Saudi Arabia to increase when America has oil and proven gas reserves on the continent. But that's again, to me, just political theater. I'm just saying that there are examples but understand Saudi Arabia in many instances is America's puppet in the Middle East, right? I'm just trying to say, if you try to do, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm not saying that. Hold on, Mucci. I'm not saying that they shouldn't fight back or they shouldn't do things and put things in place. I'm just trying to say, as I've said this before, when you're ready to fight, be prepared that you will be seen as a pariah state. They will try to turn you out to be like a North Korea. You will not be liked. You'll be on MSNBC. They'll find some woman to say, Mucci, he used to touch me at 3 o'clock. This is how they will play. Are you ready for that, Mucci?
Wait a second. I'm sorry, Gassama. You are exaggerating. Let me tell you something, okay? Right now, as I speak, there is no law or any legal framework that prevents African countries from processing their minerals in country, okay? There is refineries in South Africa. I'll give you an example of platinum, right? Russia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa were the main platinum producers, okay? South Africa is platinum refineries. And we take most of our platinum over there for refining. So there is no law to say this country you cannot have. The problem is you have to make wise investments, right? You have to make those investments. If you don't make it, you can't say, oh, if I did, maybe this will happen. The first, we have to do it. We just have to do it. We have no choice.
Mucci, what do you think happened in the Liberia Civil War and the Sierra Leone Civil War? How do you think Charles Taylor got to Liberia? He was in an American federal prison.
But again, Gassama, I'm saying something very simple here, okay? I'm saying.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think you're wait, but Mucci, wait. But Mucci, why are you ignoring what I'm saying? No, wait, before you ask me the question, I will answer your question, but I'm trying to understand why you're not. Wait, before you ask me, I want you to, I'm not sure why you're not contending with what I've said to you. I'm giving you example after example, and you said that that's not necessarily true. I'm giving you another example. How did Charles Taylor leave an American federal prison where he was convicted? How did he get out?
I cannot speak on things that I don't know of.
Okay, so Mucci, so the fact conspiracy avenue because it's there for us to see. These are what they're doing. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't fight. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do things and take measures. And again, the elder wisdom never sleeps says these things. Two Niger says these things about defense. I'm just saying, be prepared for the fight, Moochie. Don't let them send that girl from Peace Corps to put the poison in your coffee. That's all I'm telling you.
But again, Gasimab, I don't understand how you're not getting this. Is very basic. I'm telling you some of the things that can be done. There is no fighting involved. I just told you, South Africa has got platinum refineries, okay?
Who owns the refineries? Is it South Africa? Who owns it?
But
no, who owns those?
Money. It doesn't matter who owns it.
Is it De Beers? No. Is it De Beers that owns it?
No. De Beers is into diamonds.
I know they're into diamonds and other things. I'm trying to say, who owns the actual mining factory? Who owns?
Look. You're trying to get.
No, wait. See, Moochie. Wait, no, hold on. You can't just say something without giving me the. You don't know, so that's my problem, right? We might research it. So please, when you research it, then you can be able to tell me, oh, this guy particularly owns it.
Gasimab, that doesn't take away from the fact. All I'm stating to you is that there are refineries within Africa.
I agree. Dangote has a refinery. I'm trying to tell you, it's not. Yeah, but it's not. But Moochie, it's not a coincidence that Dangote is the only guy that can get a factory, and Nigeria's refineries have been thoroughly mismanaged and undermined since the 1960s. That's not a coincidence to me. And let's not.
Let me ask you. I know I've read up on the Dangote refinery. How many billions did it take to put that up?
What do you mean? How many billions? I don't know the specific amount. He spent a lot of money. He spent a lot of money to put up the refinery. How much I'm asking you? Do you know? I don't know the exact number.
Ballpark. Give me ballpark.
I don't care. Listen, Moochie, I don't care about.
You want to ask specific questions to me about how Charles Taylor got out of prison, but when I ask you something, you say you don't care. Okay,
but Moochie, you're splitting hairs at this point. That's not my point. I'm trying to. No, but your point is moot because I'm showing you that again, the Nigerian refineries before Dangote were mismanaged in collusion with the Nigerian elites, and they were doing it at the behest of people in the West. That's a fact.
Man, you don't have to blame white people for everything, man. Come on now.
Okay, so you know what? Listen, and it's gentlemen like you. That's why Africa, in my opinion, we're just very naive. Africans on the continent are very naive. You think, oh, you can't blame them. You don't know the kind of people you're dealing with, Moochie. But maybe you do. Maybe you do. You don't know who you're dealing with. And I think this naivety is why African leaders end up dying.
People like you,
because you're very naive.
You have a dangerous mindset.
No, you're too naive, brother. You're very naive. You don't know.
Let me tell you something. African Americans here, black people here, earn a lot of money, but we use a lot of our money on consumptive, buying sneakers, buying things that.
Listen.
Wait. You are the kind of person who says, "Oh, somebody's wasting their money on things that don't bring any money back," and you say it's the white man. It's the white man.
I don't tell anybody. I've never said that. That's a lie.
No.
I'm showing you. I'm trying to tell you, Moochie. Listen, Moochie. Listen, it has nothing to do with excuses. Moochie, listen. The IMF. Listen, Moochie.
Look like the white man is a boogeyman.
The IMF. Okay, good. You don't think so? Listen, Moochie. The IMF, the World Bank, right now they can put a bomb. Right, the U.S. military, they can drop a bomb.
So gas them up. In closing, what you're saying is Africans don't do anything because the white man is playing those shit.
I don't know what you're saying, Dynast. You see this? What I'm saying. It's hard to have conversations sometimes if that's the only conclusion y'all can say. I'm trying to show you
hold on.
reality.
What conclusion did you get tonight?
I think both sides have a point, and both things can be true at the same time. Just because Africa is being exploited and being mismanaged by this thing with the aid of the West doesn't still mean that we are not ultimately responsible. But what Guys them up is saying is correct, that you have to be prepared that the moment you start doing these things, they are going to have pushback. They are going to try to regain control because people are making money from our predicament right now in Africa. If you try to put things in place, they are not going to be making that money. You know, it's a very simple concept. If you try to take somebody's money, they're going to come for you. Don't expect it to be easy. And this thing, Moochie is saying that, but that doesn't stop us from just going to do a kind of take care of the low-hanging fruits. Both can be true at the same time. But like Dangote now is doing some of those so-called low-hanging fruits. But it doesn't mean that, Mushi, you have to understand that there are certain points you get to, you're going to meet a brick wall, you're going to have a problem. Because people will start telling you that, you know what, you are going too far. You are not meant to do this, you are not meant to do that. And if you are not strong enough, believe in me, you are not going to exist anymore. China didn't attack the US. Do you know that? China never attacked the US once. But yeah, they are like enemies to China today. Why? Because China is developing too far.
To Niger, let me ask you, you know what, to Niger, if I was to turn back the clock, okay, and go to 2010 or 2005, 2015 in Nigeria, there are people that will probably never believe that a black man could put up a refinery in Nigeria. They will say, no, never.
This makes sense, Moochie. We had refineries that were working. Come on, dude. What are you saying?
Listen.
No, that doesn't make sense. 10 years ago. Listen, no, that's a silly argument. Listen, 1980. Moochie, listen, it's silly. In 1970, Moochie, before the IMF created the structural adjustment programs, nobody in Nigeria was having any inconsistencies or any doubts about their existence and their ability to compete in the world stage. Come on, man. What are you saying, dude? No one is worried about that. We've always had black excellence in Africa all throughout. What I'm trying to show you.
Let me ask you something. Why did the white men not stop Dangote from building refineries? Because guess what? That $12 billion investment means Nigeria is now going to be exporting less crude oil, and they don't have to buy the
because Dangote
why didn't they stop
it's not a threat. You know why?
Come on, man.
Listen. Go and type in Dangote and Bill Gates and see who he's buddy with, and you'll see he's not a threat anymore.
You just bringing conjecture. Now you're bringing Bill Gates like a black man can't do stuff with other white men. Dangote might say some things with Bill Gates. That's just for charity, not anything to do with business. Come on, man.
Listen, one thing nobody wants to mention. Why does every so-called powerful country have military bases all over Africa? Because they're to protect the interests they have. Control. Where is Africa's army? So even if every country got together, which I agree, they should get together, do their plan and all that. That's not a disagreement here. But you have to be knowing that there will be an active war, because you said it earlier, there's a law or rule in place they have that you cannot withhold certain minerals on the global level from every country, the resources. So you can't have a rule they put out there to suppress people from doing that, and then say when you do it, it won't be an act of war.
No, it's not withholding. It's not withholding.
Listen. No, I'm not gonna let you just keep breathing fire over the one-offs. We have the Oprahs, we have all these rich people, but that's not helping the collective. Exactly. This is what we're talking about. The collective body of people in Africa and diaspora. You have to stop doing this one-off thing, because let me tell you why. When you bring up this one person doing something, we had Jesse Jackson, who allegedly told the security to go so they can have a free shot at Martin Luther King. But that same Jesse Jackson was crying tears watching Barack Obama, the first black man, get elected. So it doesn't matter about that. You have to understand that there's a lot of people that goes to these so-called World Economic Forums that are also black. They have a position to protect. So stop this one-off stuff. Let's talk about the collective. So if we're not ready to fight, like we're not ready to fight as a black collective here in America, either you bend the knee or keep going and do something silently, but you got to be ready for the war to come. You got to be ready for it. They don't all have military bases for nothing. China, Russia, US, everybody have military bases. France, everybody. Africa does not have its own united military at all. So that's why they're there. Don't ever forget they're there already.
Well said, because I think that's something that Muchi needs to hear.
But
see, Muchi, your point. See, hold on. This thing that I've heard a lot of people say this thing that we blame white people all the time. You see, that point, it is true. We are blaming white people. We are not only blaming white people. It's not just because somebody's saying, oh, somebody came and burnt, an arsonist came and burnt your house, doesn't mean you are not responsible for keeping your house safe. You are ultimately responsible because you are supposed to protect your house from that arsonist. But it doesn't mean that an arsonist didn't come in. So that is not a very fair comment for people to be making that, oh, you're just blaming white people. Yeah, we are supposed to do our own thing, but when you do those things, that's what he's trying to remind you. You have to be prepared that they're going to try to poison you. They're going to try to do this. There are so many of our leaders that have died. And you have to be prepared for all that. This all
So,
the whole thing.
who was stronger than Abacha in Nigeria's history? Who was strong? And they still killed him. You understand what I'm saying to Nigeria? Who was stronger than Abacha in Nigeria's history? And they still killed him.
For me, no African leader has been strong yet. No black country has had a strong military yet, ever, that I've seen since this modern era.
At least Abacha tried. At least Abacha tried
that is a problem. Yeah,
but they still killed him. You get what I'm trying to say? They still killed him. They still killed Abiola. So I agree with you. Remember, I told you. I said, look, I shifted my position. We have to focus on security. And so we have to focus on security. We have to focus on bond markets. We have to focus. So there's so many aspects of what we have to focus on. When you say, oh, the white guy is Thanos, listen, these people have bombs that they can drop to remove the oxygen within a 15-mile radius. You can just drop that bomb in 5 places in Nigeria. Who's going to fight? If you want to kill black people in America, all you got to do is tell the trucks, don't go to Walmart anymore. People will turn into cannibals. So it's like, I don't think we really face what it is that we're facing. Yeah, we have a few people at the top that can do certain things, but like the elder was saying, collectively, we're not as strong, and that's what we have to build. And that's why I said we have to be ready, like, okay, are we comfortable dealing with the amount that we have? We don't have to sell out to the Mzungu to get the big bag. Because if I'm doing business with 2Niger and we're at $20 million, 2Niger and I are comfortable. If Dynast comes and he's a Mzungu and says 20 billion, no, 2Niger, let's not sell. Let's keep building. Let's keep putting this thing. Let's get the turnover. Let's just keep putting it back in the business. And then secretly start, sending some money to fund some things. Maybe those boys in those mines can, get some arms to protect themselves. Or they can get them some material through a nonprofit so they can mine properly and safely so they don't have to die because we know their states aren't taking care of them. This is where we can use capitalism as a force for so-called good.
Let me say this on the Thanos thing, people. Yes, there are a lot of people still say white supremacy this, white supremacy that, and blame white man for everything. We need to get off of that on the individual basis for not progressing in life individually or collectively. Totally agree with that. However, when you started to say, we're going to raise our nation up to this level, we're going to be on the global level, we're going to do certain things that go against the grain. What you have to understand when you start doing that, you have to study the ones that's always trying to take you out. Study your enemy so you're prepared for him. Not blame him for everything, but study. So it don't keep you from forming, preparing, creating security, creating alliances, and all of those things. Be ready, prepared for that. So on one hand, there are people still blaming them for everything, and you can't do that because you're still in the hood, you still can't do Wall Street. That's a bunch of crap. However, but when you're talking about going up against them to change and take away, and you break into your Uhuru, your real freedom, and your real power that you're trying to take back, you better know they're coming for you, and you better be ready. So even if you look at the movies, when Thanos showed up, they thought they was totally prepared, and they weren't, but they did come back to defeat him. Every power comes back. They go against a lot, and they feel like they defeated, but they have to come together and say, wait a minute, there's a weakness here. We didn't study like we should. And that's what is missing in the body of building your freedom and power and taking it, is that you're assuming it's going to be easy, or you're assuming it's that way. And no, you have to know, because they're studying you every day, all the time. You're going to know you're going to lose some people. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing? Because most of the time the leaders are out there getting snapped and the people sit back and do nothing. So that's why it's easy to keep taking leaders out to put more fear into the people. So they're trying to keep control. So all I am saying, you can't blame them for your lack of doing or not doing, but you need to be prepared when you're willing to do, and you better study them and be ready for the counteract.
Yep.
Everything takes sacrifice. I mean, look at Germany. The German nation was defeated. Now it's top 3, top 4 country GDP in the world. Japan still standing, top 3, top 4 countries by GDP in the world. So you have to sacrifice. You can't. I cannot buy this idea that because something bad might happen, so we shouldn't do what is necessary to do. And another thing I want to just say, one last comment I want to say. Please, let's not compare Jesse Jackson and Dangote. They all played their important roles, but in different arenas. Okay, the petrochemical plants and the refineries in Nigeria, their central bank said that was employing upwards of 50 to 70,000 people, mostly black people. And now, when you have the refinery and you have the petrochemical products in place, the ecosystem, you're going to be employing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of black people. We have to acknowledge that.
No one didn't acknowledge it, but what I'm trying to show you is that I'm not impressed. I'm actually disappointed that it took this so-called individual capitalist who is entirely tied into the Nigerian state, while the Nigerian state allowed the refineries all across Nigeria to just be dilapidated, to just wither away. That is a problem of so-called capitalism that no one wants to talk about, right?
It's not a problem of capitalism.
Let me finish.
It's a problem of selfishness and corruption, man.
Mucci, listen. Now, when you talk about Japan and Germany, understand Japan and Germany had a Marshall Plan, my friend. Japan and Germany, after they were bombed, were rebuilt. That's why I always tell people we can't be selective with the history. Let me say the sentence, please. They were rebuilt with the Marshall Plan, and I know my elder wisdom never sleeps will be able to correct me. But it was after the factories were removed from the inner cities, which employed a lot of African American men, and those factories were taken over to China, that they were able to grow as an economy. And of course, they capitalized on that opportunity. But those same factories could have been taken over to Ghana. That same Marshall Plan could have been given to Nigeria. It was never given. You had Senator Carol Mosley Braun, who was fighting for Abacha's government, saying, listen, and she's an unsung hero. I'm going to keep always saying her name. She's an unsung hero. She said, how dare America say we won't do business with Nigeria because of human rights violations, but the Tiananmen Square and China and all these things, they're allowing them. So this is the nonsense of capitalism. They tell you, oh, it's free markets and this. Anyone who studies it knows it's never been free markets anything. Because how is it that you are telling me, oh, I can do business with China, but I wouldn't have done business with Abacha's Nigeria? That's not free markets. That's not capitalism. That's nonsense. This is picking and choosing and favoritism. And so when you tell me, oh, Germany and Japan, then you have to say the whole picture. They had Marshall Plans. They had assistance. They had help. No one has done that for Africa.
Right. See, and the case in the end, it's not about capitalism or socialism. It's just about weakness. If you don't have your ability to repel other people's influence on your own country or your own people, then you're just going to be subject to their controls, and their controls not necessarily in the interest of your people. So that's what is happening to us. We've proven ourselves to be incapable of getting our act together. In the 70s and 60s, Nigeria was borrowing money to many of these East Asian nations like Singapore and many other countries that are doing very, very well now, better than Nigeria. When Nigeria was doing that and partying while they were busy fixing their bases, and most of the stuff they were doing was military development. That's what they were doing. And they built on top of that, and this is what you have today. China went nuclear. Singapore recruited a massive military. South Korea, just look at all of them. All of them, all of them, the foundation is in their military. If once you build the military strong enough, then the next Singapore, their theory was if anybody comes and mess with them, by the time they are done with you, you're not going to get any gain from them, for one, and secondly, they will leave you wounded. In other words, they will leave more vulnerable to your enemies to destroy you. That's their strategy. They know that they cannot defeat everybody. They're a small nation, barely 10 million, isn't it? But they felt that they needed to make themselves strong enough so nobody messes with them, and look at what they've got today for it. And the same theory is what belief is what North Korea is using too. North Korea, they don't care. That's if you look at the way they behave behave the US that if you like, come and try us. We are going to make sure we deal with you so badly that by the time you are done, that superpower status is going to come down a few notches by the time they are done with you. And the so-called use of thermobaric weapons that they like to talk about, they use it against Taliban. What good did he do them? They used it in Iraq. It didn't get any. all this stuff, they use all this thing to make it look like when people are fighting war, human beings are very, very ingenious. They will find ways to survive. They're like cockroaches and they'll come at you. And the problem is that our people are so kind of scared or so lethargic about it. It's almost like a genetic fear that they don't want to put their foot forward and actually take control of their destiny. That period of fear has passed. There's an opportunity now to build because the world is in flux. If you let your fear to prevent us from doing what we to do now, it will be when the window closes again, when the Chinese, the Indians, and all of them, and the West and Americans are all on the same page, and we are not strong then. Guess who they are going to dine on? That is the mistake. If we make the mistake of allowing our fear now to prevent us from doing what we are supposed to do, the consequences will be far-reaching. How do you think you're going to be able to fight all of them off? Can you fight India, China, Russia, United Kingdom, the NATO, all of them? How can you fight all of them then? We'll completely be done for. And this is the danger we face.
That's right. I want to clarify something with Muchi, he just pulled Jesse Jackson out of the conversation. What I was comparing to when you said the first black man over there that did the refinery, I was talking about the first black man became president, didn't do nothing collective for black people. So even with him having that refinery, he only affected a few hundred or 1,000 people with jobs, but he didn't do the collective for the country itself. It didn't raise them up to be another power itself. That's an individual. So the Obama, he put programs and monies into certain groups of people, but the collective black people didn't raise up not one iota. They really went backwards in those 8 years. So, like I said, you could always bring these one-offs if you want, but how did the one-off benefit the collective people?
It benefits the collective.
Keep that in mind. The collective people.
Yes,
as a whole in Africa.
Excuse me, it's very simple, okay? If you have a refinery and Nigeria is going to be importing less of the petrochemical product, that means the fuel that the people on the street have to buy will be cheaper. Don't you know that if you go to Angola, where they have oil in Southern Africa, Angola, they pay like maybe less than $1 or so for a gallon. So if the petrol if the oil is going to be refined in Nigeria, it's a benefit for everybody. It's that simple.
No, Muchi, everybody.
In Nigeria?
It went up recently. It was like 170. It was like I think it's 170 naira. $1 is about 700 naira. So it's not expensive in terms of dollars. But Muchi, here's the thing. This is why I have, and like I said, you got to always tell the full story. See, you tried to do that with the Germany and the Japan thing, and then I say, well, tell the full story. Again, the issue is not that Dangote didn't create a great ecosystem and didn't build this refinery. No one is complaining. I'm trying to say that before there was a so-called Dangote in his refinery, which he was getting numerous state concessions in terms of his tax liability being waived, right? I'm trying to say that before that happened, Nigeria had refineries. What happened? Well, there's incompetence, there's mismanagement, and this was done strategically. So that's why I've always said, when you have leaders who would much rather be outside and abroad, until African leaders, so-called leaders, are willing to have their children never leave the country, stay in that country, build in that country. That is the difference between two Nigeria. You're saying, I think you gave the example of North Korea and Singapore and these other places. They stay in their country. Rarely, I mean, they do immigrate, but rarely do they want to just leave. They enjoy their Korea, they enjoy their Malaysia, they enjoy their Asian country. They don't want to necessarily leave. If you go to any American embassy, particularly in Nigeria, most of the people trying to escape the Nigerian, so what they call the zoo, are the people from southern Nigeria, right? Those are the ones trying to leave. So what I'm trying to say is that not just the people, even the leaders don't stay in the country. So until the leaders are willing to stay in the country, and
what is wrong with Dangote getting subsidies? Elon Musk got subsidies to be able to produce these electric cars.
But why are you reducing it? Why are you reducing it to subsidies?
I'll give you a chance to respond, okay? Because you just stating a lot of things that have no basis. People and businesses always get subsidies all over the world, okay?
But that's not capitalism.
Wait a second. I'm giving a specific example. Elon Musk got subsidies from the US government, from our taxes, okay, to be able to stand up Tesla and all that. And then you trying to talk about like as if it's a bad thing that Dangote got some subsidies or some help from the government.
It is a bad
Black
thing.
man?
No, it's a very bad thing. First and foremost,
It's a bad thing.
let me tell you why. First and foremost, Elon Musk was not the only company. He didn't even start Tesla. Again, tell the whole story. They were not the only companies that were doing electric cars. Why he got selected, who knows? But I do know he's connected and he's down, right? Because this guy was sleeping with the founder of Google's wife. See, we got to tell the whole story. I don't just go with the Forbes front page cover. We got to tell the whole story so people can make their decision. Now, if you're saying subsidies, first and foremost, any subsidy, according to the free market theories, any subsidy is a market distortion. And so if the free markets are supposed to determine, he is not supposed to be tied in with the state. But again, I know the history of so-called free markets. Free markets were planned. Planning was not. The idea of a free market comes about by the people in the state. Laissez-faire, the term laissez-faire came about because the business owners went to the French state and the French state said, hey, how do we get more taxes? And they said, laissez-faire, leave us alone. We'll do what we need to do and you can get tax revenues from our business activities. That's always been the arrangement. But they teach us, Milton Friedman style, free market wheeling and dealing and trucking and bartering. And that's not how their system works. So again, I'm not against Dangote. I don't have anything for or against him. I'm just trying to say that
benefit from
Nigeria, listen.
I don't want this to be the Moochie T and gas them up show. Let me pass it to Shah, and I'll pass it to Lumumba Speaks. Go ahead, Shah.
Okay, so if you guys can offer any more detailed information if you know, but Ajakuta Steel Factory, the largest steel factory probably in Africa, potentially. I don't know that it ever was fully operating or operating at all. I hope that it was until it was closed. And so I checked on it recently, and it had been under some litigation, and then these owners from India, they sold it or selling. Here is the largest steel factory in Africa that has not been utilized. And why? See, this is another view that we have to look at these mega projects and these big operations and see what's going on. Why so many of them have failed? When you go throughout Africa. I don't just think it's a chance that it did, and I'm kind of to Gastup's point, that's a situation. Does anybody know anything more about that could offer this information that would really speak to some inside stuff going on, sabotage, that kind of thing?
It was sabotage. It was almost completed, 97% completed when the Soviet Union fell. And the Americans basically halted the project because it was the Soviet that was building it for Nigeria. And we've tried several times to get it back on. It was supposed to be back in Nigeria, I think early this year, or last year, I mean, before this in the Ukraine war started. And guess what? America put a massive sanction on Russia. And then the Nigerian government is looking to go somewhere else again. Now, you see the problem. They completely, constantly forestall our development constantly. And Nigerian government, many of them are cowardly. They don't want to stand on their own 2 feet and say, you know what, we're going to work with Russia no matter what happens. But every West comes in, IMF is on one side, Nigeria, American, diplomatic mission is on the other side. They are just from the British, and they are just on them constantly. They won't let them move. And the whole thing is just, and this is what Gastemop was saying, that's why I think maybe one way or the other, you have to end up a bad guy. You can't get out of this thing because they will use one thing or the other. They say, oh, you're breaking the sanctions. You two should be under sanction. We are not going to move it. Sooner or later, we have to be ready to confront the fact that if you want to develop, consequences are always going to follow. If you think you're going to get away with it easily, it's not going to happen. The Chinese didn't get away with it easily, neither did the Indians. The Indians were almost physically attacked by the UK and the British. It was the Russians that went with their boats and their submarines to go and block them. It's in the ocean. So if you think you're going to get out of this mess we are in without being the bad guy to somebody somewhere, then you are not realizing the problem you are facing here, because this will never let you get away.
Let me pass the Lumumba Speaks. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
What's going on, family? Peace to everyone on the panel. I know I'm tapping in extremely late, but from seeing the headline, the question is Black capitalism bad for Black America? And I think anytime we're looking at any particular issue or entity as a panacea for the issues in our community, then of course it's going to be bad. For example, when brother Dynast Amir wasn't able to win a natty on the field with UGA, he understood. Hey, I told you I match you annually to the rematch.
But we beat. I can't wait till my new magazine comes in.
Listen, first and foremost, we know between me and you that you was acting like the Georgia Bulldogs or French Poodles during the game. You was in the fetal position the entire time.
It don't matter. We won.
Can I speak my piece? Can I speak my piece, brother? You gave me the mic. Can I speak my piece? One mic.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Brother.
So, but I think the major issue, and I think this is a conversation that truly goes all the way back to what we saw with that great debate between, of course, W.E. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, where one advocated, of course, education or political agitation, and the other agitated for, of course, economic development. And I believe that we have to have a marrying of those two ideas if we truly want to see Black America, African America, or Africans in America be able to progress and restore ourselves to our traditional greatness.
Economic is not gonna get you. You have to control specific strategic sectors of the economy. If you don't,
absolutely. And this is something that Marcus Garvey advocated in terms of, he understood the importance of controlling industry. He argued that we can't just engage in the laissez-faire capitalism, right? But we have to control particular industries and put ourselves in positions of power so that we can dictate the terms of course, trade.
Exactly. You see how some groups control finance. We could go into pharmacy. You choose a specific industry or two or three and dominate it. You have more numbers than the other groups that even dominate the finance industry. So you can dominate several different sectors of in an American context. Without that industry, the country will collapse. And they will need you forever.
Just like how Marvin Harrison Jr. was dominating Ringo, Georgia's All-American cornerback, right? That's a prime example of dominating a particular industry or sector. Absolutely.
Oh, these analogies. But wait a minute. That document you read yesterday, Dynast Amir, was on point because as you read that whole African summit, I don't know if it was the outcomes or what was expected. The part when, as you start getting into the interactions with the military in Africa, some of their goals and their ideas about their position in Africa starts to reveal a whole nother side of what some of the major relationships of the United States in Africa, along with this $50 million that was invested. But that was very interesting, though. That portion of it.
Yeah, you can see their hands. One of the biggest mistakes Nigeria made was to allow foreign companies to come and do the drilling for them. And if they had just started by themselves, then the incentive to generally steal the oil will not be there. But now they have all the incentive to ensure that we don't refine the industry, refine our petrol, because we can be buying the petrol from them. They have the incentive to ensure that the crude oil is being stolen. They get all the money. The money ends up in Western banks.
But Tunaja, you know what's so funny? Mucci was talking about subsidies, right? Now, here's the fun. And Mucci, I believe, is an economist, or he's in the finance field or whatever. And people like him in Nigeria in particular, these are the same ones shouting at the top of their lungs they should remove the fuel subsidy in Nigeria. But as he just admitted, he says that in America, that the USDA, the United States government, right, is subsidizing farmers and all kind of agencies, not just the farmers. And these farmers are subsidized where they provide cheap school lunch to children in the United States. They provide all kind of things, right, for people to consume goods and services in the United States. And so it's interesting how he is a so-called capitalist free market. He's writing all this stuff in the comments that gas won't allow Africa to grow. But it's funny that he's in America with subsidies, but he wants to bring a free market capitalist system to Africa that would largely eschew subsidies unless it benefits certain individual capitalists at the very top. So you can
I
see
think
this is the problem.
I think what he's saying, I think what it is that there should not be a general subsidies because that oil subsidy is not working. It's just impoverishing this in the people even further.
Tunaja, let me respond, please. Okay, got him
That
up.
petrol subsidies.
You brought up the issue of subsidies vis-a-vis Dangote, and I try to let you know simply and state a fact.
No, you don't have to let me know because I'm very well versed in. I know Muchi. I'm very well, Muchi. I'm very well versed. Wait, Muchi. Wait, Tunaja, listen. Muchi doesn't need to. I'm gonna let you. Wait, I'm
man. Let Muchi talk.
Let me speak. You brought up Dangote, and I simply stated that Elon Musk, he got subsidies. That's how he stood up Tesla. Okay, and I told you too. On top of that, subsidies are a matter of life. There is no rule in capitalism that says subsidies should not be allowed. Subsidies are given to farmers in America. That's why we buy milk cheap. Okay,
Muchi, you don't need to educate me.
Let me finish, please, brother. Let me finish. That's why you've got all these school lunches you're talking about. I know about all that. Okay. Also, subsidies, Medicaid.
You know that you don't need to talk to me like you're talking to a student. We're intellectually equal. You don't have to. That's the problem I have with you. No, Tunaja, I'm letting him talk, but Muchi likes to go on like he's teaching me. You're not teaching me, Muchi. I'm going to be a little bit arrogant. You don't have to teach me. I'm very well versed in the same things that you're well versed in. Trust me.
You're making false accusations. That's the problem. I never said anything about subsidies in Nigeria. I don't live in Nigeria. I'm not Nigerian, and I'm not against subsidies. So where do you get that from?
But then you are also for free market capitalism and you're promoting subsidies. That doesn't make sense. Whether you're looking at the Milton Friedman Chicago School, Tunaja, if it's Milton Friedman in the Chicago School, if it's Hayek and the Austrian School, none of them have championed subsidies as a way to so-called develop
they
an
don't
economy.
Speak for me. They don't speak for me. Gas them up. That's your problem.
Then you're not promoting free market capitalism.
Can I tap in?
You're confused.
People are fighting over something that you don't necessarily understand.
Let Lumumba speak. Go ahead, Lumumba speak. Go ahead.
So I agree with what Gassim up is saying, that if you look at the scholarship, the scholarly perspective, that's not something that's promoted. However, I do think that what we have seen, particularly in America, is that there have been times that subsidies have been used to either help the economy or a particular sector or industry in the economy. I think what Gassim up is speaking to, and of course, Gassim up, I'm quite sure you're a brilliant brother. I know you're a brilliant brother, and you can speak very well for yourself. Is this concept of neoliberalism, where this is what many argue is the market on free market on steroids, to where there is no actual what's the term I want to use? Manufacturing or engineering of the market or the economy, and typically. Those with the most power, influence, and prestige are able to manipulate the markets in particular industries by buying up particular, of course, products or companies. Would you agree with that? But my take.
Yes, that's the neocon perspective.
Yes, neoliberal. Yes, absolutely.
You know what?
Okay, let me just read this. It says subsidies are morally corrupt and anti-capitalist, therefore not good for the consumer or for the business in general. Capitalism relies on the trader principle, which is essential to its functioning. Create the most prosperity and flourishing through just voluntary, mutual, beneficial exchanges. So subsidy is actually against capitalism, but guess what? Even capitalist nation use subsidies because it's not necessarily about free trade. It's not necessarily about any of that. It's about power. All this, you see, people miss the point. They think it's about capitalism or socialism or any of this stuff. It's all about power. Just like religion, it's also all about power.
Exactly. I have a question.
That's all I'm just trying to explain to him.
What happens when there becomes a universal income in the United States? What is that? That's a social input. Like that's from more of socialism, and that's where this economy is leading to. It's leading to that kind of thing happening because of artificial intelligence and other things. Moving away from manufacturing and more into technology, and I think that this so-called capitalism will adopt socialist inputs when it needs to, wants to. And for the most part, as long as it has that 1% that stays in power, stays in power, world power, it will pick and choose what it wants to pick and choose. And I think we should too. So nothing's hard and fast. And somebody mentioned it, an analogy of like making a sandwich, like, you can put all these different things on a sandwich inside of capitalism or socialism. So whatever ism it needs to be, the main thing is that we need to protect ourselves. And right away, I think that means that Africa needs to consolidate, to come together, to put aside all of these, the tribalism. The young people are the majority of the people in Africa, and if they have the right education, their moves will be informed and it'll be better. If they don't, they're gonna, it'll be less effective. But let's pray and hope that they have enough information to take us where we need to go.
The only ism that exists in the world is powerism. It's all about power. Everything they do, capitalist, socialist, they all want to acquire power. They want to get one over the other. This is why even a communist system like China is practicing some element of capitalism, and this America is practicing some element of socialism, and sometimes even communism. Even if it's all about getting one over the other person. That is just the oldest game in the world. And we have not been playing that game for how many 100 years now. Until today, I was having a conversation with some Nigerians, and you can't believe how many of them still don't even understand the concept that they need to actually defend themselves, to actually their own security. They don't even understand that concept. And that is something that we really need to start getting our head around, because these opportunities are not going to open up very often. This opportunity is going to be open maybe 10, 20 years. We have to change off so that the changes that we have made cannot be reversed, so that eventually we become liberated from all these controls of different groups. I don't care too much about individual nation. I care about the entire race itself. If one country, if Kenya, that becomes very, very strong and very self-sustaining, that is enough to shield all of us. Just like China is enough to shield the entire Asian in the continent. Anybody messes with them, they're going to have to confront China. Even if you mess with Japan, you still have to confront China, because no matter how much they like to think that they don't like Japanese, but when white from Europe just come and want to start to exterminate the Japanese, you find that the Chinese will have a problem with it. Just like if the Chinese come into Europe and want to exterminate the Polish, they're going to have a problem. Suddenly it becomes about race. And this is why we need to understand that there is this world now exists on a racial level. Well, we don't like it, but that is what we have. And we have to learn to protect ourselves, and we don't have it now. And I tell you, all our men, all our women, we really need to start opening our eyes to this reality. Do everything you can. And one of the areas we need to is the tech areas, because technology is taking over everything there. Even financial sector, technology is taking over everything. So we need to start mastering technology and start mastering how to defend ourselves and our people. Because this is not a joke. It's a very, very serious business. And it's funny because what in the public discourse is all about capitalism, socialism, religion, race, and
distractions.
It's just about power. Yeah, it's just about power in the end. That's all it comes down to. Thank you.
No, but Wisdom never sleeps. I think he wanted to ask a question.
Yes. My question is, while let's say Africa and diaspora and everybody getting together, let's say all the countries together say they want to do certain things to move into power and freedom and break away from the global or be on the same scale. Shouldn't they, while doing all this planning, shouldn't they be building a united African military?
Absolutely. And I'm hearing John Henry Clark talking right now. Where is your army, Africa? Where is your military?
And to speak to that, the African Union has a defense force, but as we know, it's poorly constructed in comparison to other militaries. And of course, we know that the African Union, once again, is being funded by the very individuals that benefit from Africa's, of course, lowly position in the global economy, and I dare say throughout the world. So,
and which is ridiculous. It doesn't just add this. The African Union is being funded. I think about 40% to 50% of their funding it comes from other countries, which they don't even need. If they just took at $1 every month from just 25% of the population of Africa, their budget will more than 6 times, it will increase more than 6 times than today. In other words, they can be able to do almost anything by themselves, but they don't even want to lift a finger to do anything. And this is something we really, we that, discussing these things, and this generation, this is what they have to work with. In other words, it's not a very heavy lift to transform that continent. Just need to 25% of the population.
It's just a change of mentality.
$1 a month. Exactly. Just change mentality. So the potential is there. At least, let's say, our forefathers, the one that came before us, the previous generation, they've done enough work to get us to this point where they even have a standby force. Why is this generation? We should just go in there and change it and have our people start contributing to it, because it's not a lot of money.
Well, to that, Joe, we have to understand the history of what happened to us, right? So when the Portuguese first came to West Africa, what was happening? We were having skirmishes amongst each other. Everyone was trading locally. The eyesight was not looking at the Atlantic. The eyesight was looking towards the Sahara. That's where whatever excess people traded along the Saharan routes. So it's funny because people think that the Europeans sent all these armies to take over Africa, and that's not the case. They used the West African volunteer force. They used other Africans to colonize and create administration on these territories that we call African nation states today. And so that's what's happening even till now. Even till now, if you say, okay, look, like you said, let's create an African, funded.
Your mic is gone.
Okay, we still got to deal with the internal enemies that will go against whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. And so that's the real fight. The real fight is literally staring us in the mirror. We have to be ready to contend with the fight with those people in the mirror that look like us, that would rather, it's comical when you think about some of these African leaders. Look at where their children go to school. They don't go to school in Africa. They're schooled, in the university, they go to Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, Harvard. They're at the UN meetings, the State Department meetings. And these are the ones that come back and end up in positions. So it's just this continuous cycle of people who don't have the best interest of the people on the ground. And so that's where the real fight is. So we have to start putting pressure. And that's why I always say that I'm not mad at FBA, ADOS, whatever, when they come at Africans, because it's like, yeah, you should come at them. Put pressure on these people. Don't let them come to America and talk down on you. Heck no. Tell them to go back to their countries and fix their assholes, as Trump said. Because it's nonsense. You can't be here in America saying end Black History Month, blah blah blah, and you're living off the spoils of the people in Africa who are starving and suffering.
Who said end Black History Month?
One idiot African who was running for one office in Detroit, some stupid Nigerian dude.
Nigerians, they can be stupid sometimes. I'll tell you.
He was an African American, man.
There was a Nigerian who said it. There was a Nigerian. It was a Nigerian dude, if I'm not mistaken. It probably was another African American, but it was some idiot Nigerian who said it.
If we're speaking of the same person, he actually was an African American. But here's the other thing: there are many African Americans, ignorant peoples, who advocate for the ending of Black History Month, particularly Morgan Freeman. He made this out, So all I'm saying is that this whole issue of, and I don't want to get too far off subject. I don't get too
I'm
much
for the end of African History Month.
But hold on. But I'm gonna let you tap in and explain why. And I teach African American history. Like right now, that's my job. I am a professor of African American history. And I will push back against that, but I'm gonna ask a question to the person who said that right real quick. But what we tend to find is individuals who are ignorant. I would argue ignorant about Black History Month, who created it, why it's important, so on and so forth, make their claim. So now when I hear people say they're against African American History Month or Black History Month, because Black history is African history from antiquity to today, the question I ask, do you have that same energy for Women's History Month, LGBTQ History Month, Jewish History Month, Native American History Month, Islam, right? So I asked, do you have an issue with all of the history months or just Black History Month?
I don't care about other history months in the context of what I'm about to say, which is when we first heard this Black History Month come on the scene, and we're, I'm amongst my colleagues, and these are students, Afrocentric students. We're like, a month? That's all we get is a month? So we were like, no, we need African History Year. Our history is every day. It ain't just a month. So that's.
But you do know how it came into being, right?
I forgot, but I do remember when it came. Yeah, I kind of knew the history somewhat, but again,
So if I could ask, what is the history?
I cannot recall it and I can't remember, but all I can say is this: is that our history should not be emphasized in 1 month. I know it's not relegated to just 1 month, but it needs to be all year, and
it is. However, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was considered the father of Black history, right? He created the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. He also is known for writing what book 90 years ago? The Miseducation of the Negro, right? Dr. Carter G. Woodson created Black History Week, right? Which, of course, morphed into Black History Month, right? Because he wanted to take a specific set of time. Now, he believed, of course, the study of Black history 24/7, 365, but he also understood as an academic that that's not it's possible, but during the time it may have been difficult to do. So he wanted just to set up around.
Can I ask? So you are a professor of Black history or something like that. What does it entail from your context? Is it mostly like 50 or 60% about the transatlantic slave trade or the experience of the African Americans, or it goes well back into the continent and talks about the history on the continent?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that question. I wish your name was up. I could see what your name is. So I mentioned Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Dr. Carter G. Woodson and Dr. John Hope Franklin are considered the fathers of Black history. And because of their scholarship, anytime you open a Black history or African American history textbook, it always starts off with the African background. So I'm teaching 3 courses on African American history this semester. 2 of the courses I'm teaching are from antiquity to 1877. And so for the first month and a half of the semester, we're covering the African background. So we're talking about from the classical era of the Nile Valley, Axum, Nubia, et cetera, up until, of course, the end of Reconstruction. So I think that's a great question. But anyone who actually is in the know about Black history or African American history and how it's taught, because of Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. John Hope Franklin, any African American history book that you open up starts with the African background before it gets into, of course, the history of course, Western Sudan, the transatlantic slave trade, and the horrors of course, the Ma'afa, and then, of course, the contemporary African American history. So I think that was a great question.
Can I ask again? Like when you are teaching these things, do you teach them like any lessons from all the the history of the African this thing that you are teaching? Do you come up with any lessons from it? Because it's all good to say, okay, yeah, we did all some kind of great things, but then you also tell them about all the things that occurred throughout that history. And do you come up with any kind of narrative that says, this is where we got it wrong, and it's something that we need to do better?
Absolutely, I do, but also you have to understand that I have to be a bit inclusive because I'm teaching a course to all students, not just Black students. Right? So I have to do that, but I have to make sure I'm including.
You see, now that's tricky because you are teaching everybody.
Yeah, so sometimes I can't
are not actually learning what they are supposed to learn.
So sometimes, I have to, kind of be sanitized when I can't say, well, these MFers tricked us. I can't say that in the classroom.
Come on, man, you can't say that.
But one of the things
they can look at like their fellow white pupils with a side eye.
But one of the things that I do is in my class courses, I teach students that when you're learning Black history, I teach students first and foremost, we need to be critical of history, right? We need to be critical of the master narrative that is taught. I even borrow from the late great, he's actually a white guy, but radical historian Howard Zinn, who talks about in his seminal book, The People's History of the United States of America, that history is typically taught from a perspective that glorifies the nation state rather than from the history of the actual lived experiences of the people. So we talk about what were the actual founding principles of America. And it wasn't, of course, what many people would call freedom, religious freedom, pursuit of happiness, all people are created equal. We talk about the actual founding principles was settler colonialism, the genocide of indigenous peoples, and the enslavement of course, African people. But we also talk about the adaptive vitality of African people. We focus on African cultural retention. We focus on ingenuity and, of course, agency. And so a lot of times we talk about the historically, and when you learn African American history, and I hope I'm not taking up too much of the time, but Adonis, but I'm trying to I'm gonna try to square this away rather quickly. We talk about oftentimes when we learn African American history, most students are taught from a didactic top-down standpoint, in which anytime something good happened for Black people, it was because what? It came at the largesse of whites. This is extremely problematic. I argue that this is what Dr. Carter G. Woodson calls miseducation, and this, of course, stunts what the psychological development of agency and self-determination. So I was giving an example of my son when he was in second grade. Black History Month, the teacher said Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. My son's hand shot him and said, no, we freed ourselves, and we're still fighting to free ourselves. So that would be an example, of course, of promoting agency and affirming. For another example, I just discussed this in my last class, was actually this afternoon. We talked about the NAACP. And I asked them, I said, well, so why do some people view the NAACP as being problematic? I said, well, it wasn't created by Black people, by African people. And so we find that during the development of NAACP, particularly with W.B. Du Bois, when he created the Crisis magazine, which of course is the literary organ of the NAACP, what we tended to find was when Du Bois told his Jewish colleagues, hey, we need to focus on the issues in the Black community the way Jewish people do. We need to focus on education and finance. They told him, you could pack your ish and get the blank up out of here. We're not doing that. We teach you all to protest.
Okay, can I ask this question? Can I ask this final question? No, I have a final question that I need to ask, because it's more a little bit of a comment and a question. Because my fear, my concern, or something that makes me uncomfortable about this is that you are teaching both sides our history. That's all sides really, our history. One side learns that they have been outsmarted and all kinds of bad stuff happened to them. The other side learned how they did it and they left that place. My concern is that you are still equipping the other group to do more. Because remember, when they go back home, they don't get any better. They still learn that they are superior. They have all this stuff, and they go on with their so-called, as people term it, privilege and all the rest. So you have to look at it that, okay, am I actually helping my people here? Because when you are teaching them, you are put the other information, educating them on how, because all the history is telling them how their people suppressed our people, everything. Now that they are learning that lesson automatically in their head. But you are not telling our people that we made a mistake.
Right. So one of the things that I teach when I'm teaching Black history, and Mark Jean asked the question, how do we free ourselves? So I highlight the over 200 documented shipboard insurrections during the Middle Passage. I highlight the success of the Haitian Revolution. I highlight the success of Maroon societies to show that, no, we not only did we fight back, we were also successful. We talked about in class that it was so-called primitive Africans led by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Toussaint L'Ouverture, and Bookman Dada, who were the first to give Napoleon his first military defeat, not the Battle of Waterloo. So we also talk about understanding how we need to be critical of history, because oftentimes what is being taught is being whitewashed, or what many people call.
One question I would like you to ask them, what would they learn? What are they today going to learn from what happened to those Africans in Africa that were taken as slaves?
Right.
What history,
quick,
what would they learn? I think that's a good question to be asking them.
Yes, and another key thing, guys, I let the students know is that when we talk about Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, slave revolts, insurrections, I said you all need to know, when I brought the literature in to substantiate the claim I'm about to make or share, I let them know that the impetus for every slave revolt was what? African cultural retention. It was our African ancestors who would not acquiesce, not only to humanity, but their identity as African people, that led to them to always be willing to fight against enslavement. But what we find through the history, and even Frederick Douglass speaks to this in his memoir, right? His biography, that those of our ancestors who acquiesced to what the religion of our oppressors were the ones who became more amenable and docile to the institution of chattel enslavement.
Very interesting.
And they shouldn't. Sorry, I'm just reading about this one. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So just to add to your understanding that that's an area, history is one area of Africana studies or Black studies.
Yes,
but
sir.
then you also have psychology.
Yes,
you
sir.
also
Yes,
have
sir.
philosophy. You also
Yes,
have
sir.
health.
Yes.
You also have emphasis on our involvement in scientific development.
Yes.
You also have what else? Humanitarian. I took a class in humanities where we discussed it was a humanities class. So however you shape that.
I took
humanities.
I took a humanities class at the PWI, And the first two months of the semester, we stayed straight in Africa.
Yeah, we studied. I took it with Ray Richardson, who just passed a couple of years ago at 100 years old. She was a serious Garveyite. She had Marcus bookstores in Oakland, California. She was my teacher, and the whole class was on the book by Sister Maya Deren called Divine Horseman. It was on Haitian voodoo, and she went in deep on that. So that was one of the classes in humanities. And there was a class on racism by Laura Head on racism. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We studied the Francis Cresswells and
absolutely, the ISIS papers. And one of the things I focus on with the students is understanding what anti-Black racism is. So we don't just talk about racism, but we focus on anti-Black racism and having them understand that even non-Black people of color practice and engage in anti-Black racism.
That's true.
Yeah. So all I want to say is, listen, I'm doing my due diligence in the classroom. Trust me. If you were there, you would be saying bravo, brother. Trust me on that one. Straight up.
Yeah, I want the Black students to live there and realize that they need to learn a few lessons from history. Yeah, they need to learn because that's the whole purpose of doing that. And not just an airy-fairy knowledge of history. It's for them to learn not to make the mistakes of the ones that came before. Because the others are learning. They are learning how they did it to us.
But this is what Africa needs too. Africa needs this type of education, and it can be tailored specifically for regions or areas. But this type of information, it needs to be brought and taught throughout Africa, because my understanding is that is not the education that African children are getting in young adults, high school. So it's not just
true.
Yeah.
It needs to come to the continent, and I think the reason why, because this tells you everything you need to know, because they worry that if they start sharing these things, the so-called Europeans will tell them that they are trying. These people are more. I think they are actually more clear. This is a very big indication that they know fully well that if they do this even simple thing about telling their people about their history and letting them know that they should learn from history, that their so-called IMF and all of them will not be very happy with them. Instead, they want to tell us about LGBT rights and climate change and all these other things, but they will not tell our history because it's going to wake people up too much. You see what I mean? And see, I spoke to the current presidential candidate just last week. Chances of him winning the presidency is 1 out of 3 right now. And he was for, this in creating a 1 million man army in Nigeria, which is something that has never happened before. And so I was concerned that he was going on the campaign trail, not repeating it again. He kept saying, we're going to, create security and all the rest. So I went there. I was like, you know what? You've been talking about recruiting 1 man military, 1 million man army, 1 million in the police and customs. But somehow you've stopped saying it as if, because from what I gather, our military is extremely weak.
We have to wrap it up. So
come on, man. I'm talking about the presidential candidate I spoke to.
I gotta go. 30 seconds. We gotta go.
Yeah, but it's all right. I mean, Dinah's running because he's running from that rematch. From that. Oh man, you know what that is. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah. So he went on to confirm that he was going to do it. So it tells you that if Nigeria is able to do that, that's something you all need to watch out for. If Nigeria goes from 100,000 soldiers to 1 million, that is going to be a game changer on that continent. So you should watch out for that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynast Search for Uhuru. Peace.
Peace.